Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody can hear me okay? Yes? Great. So we have a quorum already, which is fabulous because it is just after 7 o'clock. So that is great. I'm so happy. I'm glad everybody came on time this evening. But before we begin, this evening we have some elected officials here from our community, and they wish to make a brief update prior to our town meeting commencing. So I'm going to introduce them individually and allow them to speak for a couple of minutes so all of you can hear from them, which is a really great and important thing for all of us as citizens. So first, we have United States Congressman Stephen Lynch, who represents the 8th Congressional District in Massachusetts, including the town of Easton, and was first sworn into the United States Congress in 2001, having previously served in both the Massachusetts House of Representatives and the Massachusetts State Senate. He serves in Congress as a senior member on both the Committee on Oversight and Accountability and the Committee on Financial Services. The Congressman was kind enough to join us this evening for a brief update to Easton voters before commencing town meeting, and we're pleased to recognize him and welcome him to do so. Congressman?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator.
You might have to turn it. There's a little button to flick it on. See? Try now.
Hello?
That's
There we
right.
go. All right. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I know that you have quite a bit of business on the warrant, so I'll keep my remarks very brief. I do want to acknowledge my colleagues in government, Senator Walter Timilty, Representative Cassidy, Representative Doherty, and I'm not sure if anybody else is here, but I want to thank as well the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator Connor Reed. Recently, they worked with us very closely on a priority project for the town of Easton to try to get some federal money for a project to redo the public safety building here in Easton. So we're working on that, but we appreciate the good work by the local delegation. I understand there are quite a few items on the warrant, but I represented the town of Easton about 10 years ago here. And after redistricting, we lost actually 2 members of Congress. They changed the districts around, so now I'm back, and I just want to say that I'm very grateful for the opportunity to represent the town of Easton once again in the United States Congress. I'm pleased to report that we're able to direct $2.2 million in federal funding to Easton from the Federal CARES Act, which was to deal with the medical impacts and the health impacts of the pandemic. In addition to that, we were able to provide another $2.6 million from the Federal American Rescue Plan Act, which actually tried to compensate the town of Easton for lost revenues during the pandemic, with the loss of meal revenue, other taxes because of the drop-off in economic activity. I know there's also some remaining funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. Actually, 60% has been allocated by the state of Massachusetts, the governor and the legislature, which means there's about $2 billion left to issue to our cities and towns. I'm also pleased to announce again that we've been working with the Select Board and Town Administrator Connor Reed on a proposal submitted by Easton as a priority project to be included in our next government funding package. Easton has requested $2.75 million to replace their current public safety and public works facility with a new consolidated police, fire, and public works facility, which will also include a centralized emergency operations center. This new facility is designed to improve the high level of emergency response services provided by emergency response teams to Easton's 25,000 residents, along with all of its businesses and visitors. The community project funding submissions were created to allow federal funding to go right where it is needed most. So in the past, federal funding would go to the governor, and the governor would decide what projects in what towns and what cities would be a priority. This is, it used to be called earmarks, but we don't call them that anymore. We call them priority project funding. The request has to come from the town or city. It does not come from me. I think that your local delegation has a much better idea of what the priority projects are for the town of Easton, and that's the way this works. So as we work through negotiations for the bill, obviously the House is in Republican hands right now, so this is a bipartisan negotiation between us and the Republicans, but we will work together. They also have priority projects that they'll need my support on, and so it's sort of a bipartisan approach to recognize local towns and their decisions on what projects should have a priority in that given location. And obviously, I'll work with Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey on the Senate side to give us the best chance of success on our requests. I'm sure you're all aware the bipartisan infrastructure law was signed last year. We're seeing funding being delivered across the nation. It was $1.2 trillion. Massachusetts has some of the oldest infrastructure in the country. And at that time, I was a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, so we worked closely with Secretary Buttigieg and the Biden administration to get that done. So up to the current date, we have received in Massachusetts $3.7 billion in funding. We'll receive another $5 billion over the next 5 years for basic infrastructure, transportation, and climate change resiliency projects, both coastal and riverine. Our state is already putting this historic funding to maximum use, and I think we'll see the impact of that in the near term. Our state will receive in total $5.4 billion for our roads, $2.8 billion to modernize our rail, and $1.4 billion to improve our water infrastructure. We'll also receive a record $1.1 billion for a bridge replacement program and repairs that are necessary for, we currently have 472 bridges. I'm a former iron worker, so we pay attention to this, but we have 472 bridges that are in deficient condition across the Commonwealth. So that $1.1 billion will go a long way in repairing many of those bridges. Currently today in Congress, our top priority is really getting the debt limit passed. So the debt limit is an approval from Congress to direct the president to pay past bills. So this is not for new funding. This is to pay past obligations. It's important that we work together across the aisle with our Republican colleagues so we can be fiscally responsible. But on the local level, it's important to remember we have 86,000 seniors in our little congressional district. So I've got 18 towns and 3 cities. 86,000 seniors that rely on Social Security. That would be impacted. That's a federal obligation that was incurred, that was earned by those Social Security recipients. They would be at risk. Those payments would be at risk or delayed if we do not raise the debt ceiling. So we also have about 266,000 citizens in our little district here that get their health insurance through Medicare, Medicaid, or we also have tens of thousands of veterans who rely on veterans health care. We have three veterans hospitals in my district, West Roxbury, Brockton, and Jamaica Plain. And so those veterans would be hard-pressed if those benefits did not continue. There are also other impacts such as interest rate, our credit rating, and other aspects of that would be damaged if we fail to pass that. So we've got to, I am working every single day to try to get a clean bill through so that we avoid that calamity. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to represent the town of Easton in the United States Congress. Having represented you before, I am fully aware of the deep commitment that you have to your kids. I think every single year for the 10 years I was here before, a student from Oliver Ames won the art competition in the United States Congress every single year, 10 years in a row. You should be proud of that. I know that work is ongoing. I see the way that, that the town of Easton regards its senior citizens and the respect that you extend to them. And I also know the way that the town of Easton treats its veterans and the dignity and respect that you show to them and the appreciation for their service to the United States of America. So for all those reasons, Easton is really a shining example of what's best about America. And I appreciate the opportunity to represent you in Congress, knowing full that you have the very highest expectations of all of your elected officials. So may God bless the town of Easton. Thank you very, very much. Town meeting is the essence of democracy. It's where everything begins. So I want to thank all the members of town meeting for coming here tonight to do your business and taking the time out of your busy days to do what's right on behalf of the people that we all represent. So God bless you all, and may God continue to bless these United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Lynch. Next, we're going to hear from Senator Walter Chiltonty, who is here as well. He's been a member of the Massachusetts State Senate since 2016 and represents Easton as part of the Norfolk, Bristol, and Plymouth District. Prior to that, starting in 1999, Senator Chiltonty was a member of the Massachusetts House of Representatives. He currently serves as chairperson of the Joint Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security and vice chair of the Joint Committee on Emergency Preparedness and Management, in addition to being a member of many other state committees. We're grateful that the Senator is able to attend the meeting and invite him to say a few words. Senator?
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Moderator. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation and for granting me permission to address this august body. And of course, to Chair Fulgenetti, thank you very much for the invitation. It is my great privilege to be here with you all tonight and be very proud to say that I am a member of the Easton delegation with our wonderful federal partner, Congressman Lynch, and my colleagues at the state level, Representative Carol Doherty and Representative Jerry Cassidy. And I must say, first of all, a belated Happy New Year's, Happy Mother's Day. That old commercial, Southwest Airlines, do you want to get away? But very belated Happy Mother's Day. Most importantly, thank you to the residents of Easton for the great honor of serving as your state senator. I will never forget that I work with you. With this privilege, Senate President Spilka has appointed me to the following committees. And of course, Madam Moderator, thank you for the very kind introduction. As the moderator mentioned, I am the chairperson of the Joint Committee from the Senate side of Homeland Security and Public Safety. I'm also the vice chair, as the moderator mentioned, of Emergency Preparedness and Management. I also serve as a member, rank and file member of the Senate Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs. I'm a member of the Joint Committee on Bonding, Capital Expenditures, and State Assets. I'm also a member of the Joint Committee on Consumer Protection, Professional Licensure, and also a rank and file member of the Joint Committee on Transportation. As I'm sure you are all aware, we are in the throes of our budget season in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This coming Monday, we will commence our budget exercise in the State Senate for the FY24 fiscal year. Thus far, the Healy-Driscoll administration has proposed for its FY24 budget a recommendation of $55.5 billion. This occurred on March 1st of this year. Moreover, the Senate Ways and Means Committee filed its FY24 budget last Tuesday, proposing a budget of $55 billion. This past week, I and other colleagues in the State Senate filed amendments with our various goals and hopes for tweaking the budget in various ways to help our constituents, support our constituents, and obviously serve the towns that we're so proud to represent. With that, I would like to specifically delineate the amendments that I have filed for the town of Easton. Now, I must caution you, the process has been designed as by the founders of the Commonwealth to be very deliberate, and it is always an uphill fight with each and every amendment seeking its adoption during our budget exercise next week. But I will never forget that I work for each and every one of you, and I will give it my best effort seeking these amendments, which I believe are well-founded. First of all, I have filed an amendment for $20,000 seeking for Easton Wings of Hope, which does magnificent work. I offered my inaugural speech on the floor of the state Senate seeking money for each of the 7 substance use disorder coalitions that I am proud to represent. I'm a big believer that we should provide the resources to the individuals on the front lines of society who are doing wonderful work. Easton Wings of Hope fits that description to a T. I've also filed $5,000 seeking an amendment for Easton Food Pantry. Again, an organization on the front lines of our communities that is doing wonderful work, that knows how to appropriate the money and spend it and expend it. I've also filed an amendment seeking $50,000 for Easton for PFAS remediation. And I thank Connor Reed for your collaboration on that amendment. I also thank the Select Board for their collaboration on each and every one of these amendments. I've also filed an amendment seeking $460,000 for the purchase of a new ambulance for the Easton Fire Department. And I would like to thank Chief Alexander and Deputy Chief Carroll for your collaboration on that item. I've also filed an amendment seeking $2.2 million for the purchase of a new ladder truck for the Easton Fire Department. Again, Chief, thank you very much for your collaboration. I've also filed an amendment seeking $45,000 for the purchase of vehicle extrication equipment for the Easton Fire Department. Moreover, I filed an amendment seeking $750,000 for security upgrades at the following 3 schools in the town of Easton: the Richardson Olmsted Elementary School, Easton Middle School, and Oliver Ames High School. And I thank Alicia Cabral, our superintendent, Dr. Cabral, and of course our deputy superintendent, Chrissy Pruitt, for their collaboration. Moreover, I have filed an amendment seeking $50,000 for the town of Easton to plan and implement the town's 300th anniversary celebration. And I thank the co-chairs of your anniversary celebration committee for their input with this amendment. Moreover, I have filed an amendment seeking $50,000 for emergency repairs to Oak Ames Memorial Hall. And I also would like to thank Fred Ames and our former auditor, Suzanne Bump, for their input with this amendment. Finally, I filed an amendment seeking $75,000 for raising multicultural kids. And with that, I would like to thank Kelly Lamb and the members of RMK, who do great work across town, for their input. In addition, I've also filed a variety of amendments that I believe, if adopted, will have a very positive impact for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. First of all, I filed an amendment seeking $1 million for refurbishment and restoration of the Trailside Museum, which hundreds of schools throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it's not just a regional asset, attend Trailside Museum for education in animal science and education in our environment. Moreover, I filed $250,000 for the Blue Hills Observatory and Science Center. And finally, I've also filed a $250,000 amendment for municipal grant programs to be administered by the State Fire Marshal for critical firefighter cancer screenings, including advanced blood screening and imaging. Our firefighters each and every day face the occupational risk of exposure to carcinogens. These screenings can help with early detection, saving lives most importantly, also preventing lost work time, minimizing lost work time, and as I mentioned earlier, most importantly, saving lives for our first responders. Those are just a snapshot of some of the amendments and various legislative actions that I've taken. I would like to mention one last legislative bill that I have filed. It's one of my top priorities. It's to create a public safety building authority. It's a bill that I have collaborated with police chiefs from around the Commonwealth, the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts, and professional firefighters of Massachusetts. Specifically, this legislation will reform the process of funding capital improvement projects for the public safety buildings here in the Commonwealth. For example, across Massachusetts, buildings that house our first responders and critical public safety infrastructure have become dilapidated, unhealthy, and unsafe. We have all seen that firsthand, whether or not you serve as a police officer or a firefighter. In short, the Massachusetts Public Safety Building Authority will be based on the Massachusetts School Building Authority. We already have a ready-made example in place. This is a piece of legislation. In the last term, I collaborated with our state auditor, former state auditor Suzanne Bump. Again, Auditor Bump, thank you for your collaboration and your know-how in that. And with that, I would like to thank each and every one of you for the privilege of working for you. It is my privilege to work for you, and I will never forget that I work for this great town of Easton. Thank you all very much and wish you all the best with your town meeting exercise today, which, as Congressman Lynch alluded to, is the essence of New England government and is where it truly all starts. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Carol Doherty is the 3rd Bristol District State Representative serving parts of Taunton and Easton. Doherty has served as representative since 2020 and prior to this role was a 5-term Taunton School Committee member. She serves and has served on many House committees and joint committees, including the House Committee on Global Warming and Climate Change and the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. We're happy to welcome Representative Doherty and recognize her to address the Easton voters. Representative. I have one card.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Moderator. It's a pleasure to join my colleagues in government at the state level and at the national level as well, and of course my colleagues in government here in the town of Easton. I represent a portion of the 3rd Bristol, all of the 3rd Bristol District, a portion of Taunton and precincts 4A, 5, and 6 here in Easton, sharing the rest of Easton with Representative Cassidy, who you will hear from in just a few moments. I will make an effort to be brief because I know that you are anxious to get on with deliberating over the issues that are clearly meaningful and important to you here in the town of Easton. And we as legislators make every effort to help to support your efforts in achieving what you hope to achieve for your community. So I come here to listen to what you have to say. First, to hear about Easton's priorities, although I have a good working relationship with your town administrator, with your superintendent of schools, and members of the select board, and so they keep me up to date during the rest of the year in terms of what your wants and needs are for your community. So it is a pleasure to work with them. Connor Reed is always very clear about what those needs are and not shy about asking for what it is that he feels that the legislature ought to be doing on behalf of you, his community, and everyone who lives here in Easton. Select board members and the superintendent of schools also share those priorities, and we make an effort to bring those priorities to the state level and try to do something about it. I know that as your community grows, the needs of the community grows as well for the services that you expect from your town and for the improvements that you know are needed here in the town of Easton. And I think about the great work that's been done at Five Corners in terms of development and what the future holds for those Five Corners. I think of the new school, which I just stepped foot into just last week at a meeting with Raising Multicultural Kids and with the superintendent. That's a beautiful facility. And had a conversation just at the end of last week with your chief of fire chief to talk about his aspiration and the town's aspiration for the public safety facility. The legislature needs to be knowledgeable and responsive in order to consider the changes that you are facing for the community and to address those needs at the legislative level. I am always open to welcoming your voice, to hear from you, to take advantage of opportunities that are presented to me by you and by Easton's leadership and by the citizens here in the community. So I will not delineate all of the work that I have done over the short term that I have been representing Easton, but I certainly would be happy to talk with any one of you to provide you with that information. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I wish you all the best as you consider those important issues that you are challenged with here in the town of Easton. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Representative.
Representative Jerry Cassidy was elected to the House of Representatives representing the 9th Plymouth District in 2016. The 9th Plymouth District includes precincts 1, 2, 3, 4B, and 7 in the town of Easton. He's currently the chairperson of the Joint Committee on Veterans and Federal Affairs. We welcome Representative Cassidy and invite him to say a few words. Representative?
Thank you. I just wanted to come up quick. I don't have any notes, so a lot of cheers maybe. But I do want to thank Congressman Lynch. Thank you very much for getting us through COVID. I mean, if it wasn't for the federal government, us here in Massachusetts would be in deep trouble. So thank you very much, Congressman Lynch. I was born and raised in Brockton with my good friend Claire Cronin, and the Ambassador Claire Cronin. I just want to give her accolades for what she has done, and I see Jerry Osborne out here, and she's doing an unbelievable job, and I have part of her district here in Easton, and it's an honor and privilege to represent the people here in Easton. I have some good and dear friends. We, like Senator Timothy said, they're starting their $55 billion budget next week. Earmarks that I put in during the budget, Carol Doherty, representative, we put in $100,000 for the fire department for the equipment there. But I just want to say thank you very much, and my door is always open.
Representative Cassidy. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move into our annual town meeting. Just a few opening remarks that I have before we say the Pledge of Allegiance and start the town meeting. So welcome this evening. I'm your town moderator, Kate Welch. Up here on the stage with me this evening is legal counsel or counsel for the town of Easton, Jay Tallerman, and the town clerk, Danielle Sicard. And in front of me here on the floor is our select board, and to the left on the floor in front of me is our finance committee. So as we go through the warrant this evening, as we go through all of the articles, they'll be making recommendations to you. You'll be hearing presentations. It's extremely important to try to keep this as orderly as we possibly can. And town meeting here in Easton is run by town meeting time. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to stress this, that after each article, when it's time for the public or for anybody to speak, there are 2 microphones kind of in the mezzanine area. You can go and stand at the microphone. It's extremely important for you to say your name nice and clearly and say your address nice and clearly, because not only is town meeting being recorded by ECAT so everybody at home can see who couldn't make it here this evening, but also Town Clerk Sicard is recording all of the minutes, if you will, for town meeting, and it's important to know who is saying what at that microphone. And speaking of when you get to that microphone, I want you to realize and think about this. Each article, you have the opportunity to make a statement, question, comment, concern, if you would like. However, you're only going to be able to get up to that microphone 1 time for each article. We have a lot of articles in the warrant this evening, and it's going to be 1 time for each person. So gather your thoughts, make sure you know what it is you want to say before you get up to that microphone, and say whatever it is you have to say, okay? We do have a quorum at this point in time. I would just like to remark about our orange card. So when you came in, you should have registered at the tables in the entryway to the auditorium and gotten an orange card if you're a registered voter. Those orange cards, as most of you know, become extremely important because those are the cards that you use when we vote. So when I'm asking for a vote and a raise of hands, I need to see that orange card in order for your vote to count. If you're not a registered voter here in Easton, you're still obviously welcome to stay here and listen to the process, to town meeting, to all of the articles in the warrant. There is a designated area down front if you're not a registered voter and you'd like to sit down front. We're also joined tonight by many committee members, department heads that will also be contributing here this evening. Okay, so with all of that said, the The clerk has confirmed that the return of the warrant is in order, and we have a quorum. I'd ask you all to rise so we can say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Today is Monday, May 15th, 2023. The time is 7:35. The annual town meeting for the town of Easton is now called to order. Article 1, Board Member Fulgenetti.
I move that the town vote to accept the reports of the Select Board, Town Administrator, Assessors, Board of Health, Town Clerk, Treasurer, Collector of Taxes, School Committee, Town Accountant, Director of Public Works, and all other departments, boards, and committees of the town.
Second.
By way of explanation, this is an annual vote to accept the town report, and the Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
Any comments, questions, or concerns relative to Article number 1? Okay, there being none, all in favor, please signify by raising that card, and we need a simple majority vote. All those in favor? And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. And Article 1 passes by majority. Article 2.
I move that the town vote to authorize the total expenditures pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023, to be expended in accordance with said bylaws pertaining to the revolving fund as printed in the warrant.
Second.
By way of explanation, this article sets the annual spending limits for all revolving funds established pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, and further codified in Chapter 26, Section 6 of the town's bylaws. Actual expenditures cannot exceed the balance in the fund, even if the expenditures are less than the established limits. The Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article number 2? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please raise that orange card. This requires a simple majority vote. All of those opposed, please raise their orange card. And Article 2 passes by majority. Article 3.
I move that the town vote to fix the salary and compensation of all elected officers of the town as provided by Section 108 of Chapter 41 of the General Laws as printed in the warrant.
Second.
By way of explanation, this is an annual article required by the statute to set the salary levels for all compensated elected officials. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
All those in favor of Article 3, please raise that orange card. Article 3 requiring a simple majority vote. All of those opposed, please raise that orange card. And Article 3 passes by majority. Article 4.
I move to dismiss Article 4.
Second.
By way of explanation, there are no unpaid bills from the prior fiscal year at this time.
So we need a vote on dismissal of an article. It's a simple majority vote. All of those in favor of dismissing Article 4, please raise your orange card. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. And Article 4 passes by a simple majority. Article 5.
I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $157,789 from solid waste and recycling surplus to supplement the fiscal year 2023 solid waste and recycling enterprise fund budget.
Second.
By way of explanation, the solid waste and recycling enterprise budget requires additional funds resulting from increased enrollments and recycling processing fees. The Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee met earlier tonight and voted to recommend Article 5.
Any comments, questions, or concerns regarding Article 5? Seeing none, Article 5 requires a simple majority vote. All of those in favor of Article 5, please raise that orange card. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. And Article 5 passes by majority. Article 6.
Good evening, and thank you very much for all of you for coming out tonight. And on a personal note, I want to thank all of you for allowing me the privilege of serving for another 3 years on the Select Board here in Houston.
Congratulations.
I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $100,999,126, of which $90,118,659 shall be raised from taxation, $850,000 shall be transferred from free cash, $750,000 shall be transferred from the American Rescue Plan Act state and local fiscal recovery funds, $35,000 shall be transferred from the Planning Board review fee revolving fund, $44,000 shall be transferred from the district improvement financing funds, $227,789 shall be transferred from septic betterments receipts reserved for appropriation, $4,237,842 shall be transferred from water enterprise receipts, $705,000 shall be transferred from water surplus, $839,844 shall be transferred from sewer enterprise receipts, $522,000 shall be transferred from sewer betterment receipts reserved for appropriation, $1,968,992 shall be transferred from solid waste and recycling enterprise receipts, and $700,000 shall be transferred from cable franchise and related revenue enterprise receipts, all to meet town charges, including the salaries of several elected and appointed officers of the town for fiscal year 2020, as printed in the warrant under Article 6. By way of explanation, this is the annual operating budget for the town. The town administrator and others will make a presentation at town meeting regarding this proposal.
Mr. Reed, just one thing before we do that. Select member Barger, at the very end, could you just reread the last line?
And appointed officers of the town for fiscal year 2024, as printed in the warrant under Article 6.
Thank you. Okay. Administrator Reed.
Thank you. Good evening, friends. Thank you all for attending town meeting and spending some time with us tonight. For those I haven't met yet, my name is Connor Reed. I'm your town administrator here in Easton, and I'm pleased to provide what I promise will be a 4-minute presentation on the operating budget. I'm serious. The fiscal 24 budget will be our third annual budget since the pandemic arrived. It's a level service budget that prioritizes preserving existing service levels across the town and school government, as well as gradually stepping down our use of reserves and federal grants in the wake of the pandemic, such as the American Rescue Plan Act, in order to prepare us for a post-pandemic budget window that we are approaching when those grants expire. Our general fund revenue, which is composed primarily of property tax, local receipt, and state aid, will grow modestly by 3.3% next year for a total of $94.5 million. State aid continues to lag behind property taxes and local receipts from a growth perspective, but overall, this coming year, the general fund revenue picture is stable. Enterprise revenue, which is revenue that comes from use-based services like water, sewer, trash, and recycling, will grow meaningfully next year from its current $6.8 million to $9 million. This is reflective of 3 things. One is the increasing water enterprise cost to fund town meeting approved bonds for water treatment plants, including PFAS plants, which are nearing completion, will go online this summer. The second is growing users for the sewer districts and trash programs. And the third is increasing unit costs within those programs, particularly recycling. General fund expenditures next year will grow by 3.3% to match projected revenue of $94.5 million, with fixed costs, including debt service, insurances, state and regional assessments growing at a decently below average rate of 3.3%. And we have a similar growth factor of 3.29% for the town and school operating budgets. Fixed cost expense drivers that normally can pose a challenge for budgeting, such as health insurance rates, were moderated this year by premium savings programs that we've implemented in town to incentivize employees to switch to more cost-effective programs. Utility cost challenges that we expect next year will be moderated by the allocation of previously generated solar credits, thanks in part to lease agreements that town meeting has authorized in the past for roof-mounted solar. Operating budget expenditures, so that's for town and school departments, are largely reflective of personnel costs, Staffing across the community will be comparable next year compared to the current year, with minor adjustments in the areas of public safety and risk management on the town side, and for special education and early education on the school side. Year-over-year operating budget growth is stable, which again is reflective of tight expense budgeting by department heads, as well as conservative wage agreements we've been able to strike with our unions, both of whom or all of whom I thank for their collaboration to keep Easton a high-service community during pretty challenging inflationary times. The net result is a balanced fiscal year 24 operating budget, which is $103.5 million inclusive of our enterprise funds. It maintains the current level of service with targeted adjustments to meet currently unmet needs, and does so in a way that minimizes the use of local reserve dollars. No stabilization funds are used in this budget. Free cash use of $850,000 is well below our policy targets and our historical averages. Our goal in the coming years will be to continue to gradually step down or phase out pandemic-era federal grants and absorb what we can into our operating budgets. This goal, coupled with the continued challenges posed by being a minimum aid community from a state education funding perspective, will pose meaningful challenge for Easton. Accomplishing that will likely require a transition period where we rely on local reserves to bridge the gap, and we've made sure to build up that capacity over recent years. We continue with the support of voters at town meeting to build our stabilization fund, and that balance has grown from about 1.8 to over 5.8 million in the previous 6 years following our adoption of fund balance policies. That work has not always been easy. Budgeting in Easton is not always a smooth process, but it has allowed us to make modest operational progress in our highest need areas while building our financial capacity to weather uncertain economic times. I appreciate our staff and the many board members across the community who participate in those efforts, as well as all of you for being here tonight and at previous town meetings who adopted all of these budgets. Your collective actions across our Operating Capital and Community Preservation Act budgets have contributed to a strong and thriving Easton. Thank you for your time, and I believe now we will hear committee recommendations on the article.
Thank you.
Did anyone time it? Select board. We just need to hear recommendations at this point. And finance committee.
Finance committee recommends.
Okay, so prior to commenting or having anybody ask questions, I'm going to read all the budget line items. If anyone has any comments or on any of the budget line items, what I want you to do is yell out hold for that line item. We then will return to the help line items for discussion and ultimately a vote, okay? Does that make sense? So I'll read each line item individually. If you want to have a question or a comment or concern about any line item, you just need to yell out hold, then we'll come back and talk about them. Okay. Select board. Finance committee. Reserve fund. Accountant. Assessors. Town collector / treasurer. Town council. Information technology. Town clerk. Planning and economic development. Police. Public safety dispatch. Fire and rescue. Inspectional services. Regional and county school assessments. DPW administration. Health and community services. Library. Maturing debt and interest. Employee benefits and insurance. Other general government. School department. Sewer department enterprise. Water division enterprise. Solid waste and recycling enterprise. PEG access and cable related fees enterprise. Okay, so as I understand it, we only have a hold on school department, correct? Okay. So what we're going to do is with regard to all of the unheld budget line items, everything except for school department, we're going to have a vote on that right now, okay? So all of the unheld budget line items, okay? It requires a simple majority vote. All of those in favor, please raise your orange card. All the unheld. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. Okay, so all of the unheld items Passed by majority vote. All right. So now, with regard to the one held item, the school department, any comments, questions, or concerns relative? Again, you have to come up to the microphone, name, address, one time at the microphone.
Erin Hooker Thomas for Pheasant Lane.
Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
So I was just made aware that there's going to be some cuts to assistant coaches, and my son is in the program of track and field, which has roughly 140 kids. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of the amount of time that these coaches put into these meets. It's not just a couple hours a day. There are Saturdays, there's about 5 or 6 a season, where 8 hours is spent a day mentally preparing these athletes. And they're not just local, they're Fitchburg State, Westfield State. So I just want to make people aware of how much time these coaches put in. And as it is, they're already well below minimum wage. It's going to be averaging $3 an hour if you're cutting more. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Dr. Cabral?
Hi, I'm Alicia Cabral, Superintendent of Schools. Thank you for that feedback and for that support of our coaches. We feel the same way. This is a vote for a bottom line budget, and we cannot have conversations about what gets moved or where it gets moved until we know how much we are dealing with. We have not made any changes to this point, and in fact, we're in active negotiations right now, and it's not settled, so I actually can't speak to the point for that reason. But please be assured that we feel the same way about our coaches, about our advisors, about our staff. We are here to advocate for those people and for our students, and I assure you we do.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns about that one line item, school department?
Jacob Napodi, 17 Turnpike Street. Again, I am an alumni of the cross-country and track programs. Both these programs completely shaped who I am today. I just finished my first year at University of New Hampshire with a top-of-class GPA. I'm an Eagle Scout, and these programs truly did shape me as a kid, and I want to make sure that this town recognizes just how much, not just the main coaches, but the assistant coaches put into this program, not only on the field helping the kids, but outside of those events, they are considering what they need to talk about, considering how to best mentor these kids. And while I recognize that today is not the day where the actual decision is made, I just want to be made fully aware that these people are exceptionally necessary and exceptionally underpaid in their current position. And I understand this is not the meeting in which it's decided. I just want to fully recognize just how much they've done for this town, for these athletes, and for me personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concern relative to that one budget line item? Okay. Seeing none, we need a simple majority vote to pass this budget line item. So all of those in favor, please raise your orange card. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. And the one line items of the school department passes by majority. So we are at Article 7.
Bear with me, this is another long article. I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $10,570,492 for the purpose of meeting the capital budget needs of the town for fiscal year 2024 as listed in the warrant article, Article 7. And that to meet this appropriation, $878,057 shall be transferred from free cash, $712,660 shall be transferred from the insurance recovery funds. $117,283 shall be transferred from the capital stabilization fund. $320,000 shall be transferred from the sewer stabilization fund. $339,000 shall be transferred from available mitigation funds. $952,000 shall be transferred from water surplus, and that the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow $7,251,490 for the school security improvements, Richardson Olmsted School playgrounds and outdoor classroom areas, fire ladder truck, portable radio replacements, sewer replacements with data migration, DPW hook lift, DPW log truck, asset management planning grant, and water main replacement under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, or any other enabling authority, provided that in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 20 of the General Laws, the premium received by the town upon the sale of any bonds or notes thereunder, less any premium applied to the payment of the cost of issuance of such bond or notes, may be applied to pay project costs. An amount authorized to be borrowed for each such project shall be reduced by the amount of any such premium so applied, and to authorize the select board to do or take all action necessary to carry out these projects on behalf of or in the name of the town. Second. It's all right. By way of explanation, this is the annual capital budget for the town. A 2/3 majority vote is required for borrowing and appropriations from stabilization funds. Select board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 7? If you have a question, you need to approach the microphone.
Suzanne Bump, 6 Hoshop Street. I am just looking ahead to other items on the warrant, and I wondered if someone could just give an overview of the various funds and the various ways that you are seeking to fund the playground at Richardson Olmsted School. So I see that some is coming from CPA and some is coming from here. Is there just an overview that can be provided? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Tom Broussard, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee. Thank you, Suzanne, for the question. So there is an Article 19, which is for the RO playground and outdoor classroom area. The total cost of the project is $4.4 million. As Suzanne noted, $500,000 is currently in this capital request. The CPC recommendation that's been unanimously supported is to fund an additional $3.5 million, and then credit to the applicant, the schools, for committing to raising the additional $400,000, either through grants or fundraisers. So when that time comes, buy bricks or cookies, and that would help out that particular aspect as well. Hopefully that addressed the combination of the $4.4 million in total spend.
It does, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 7? Okay, Article 7 needs a 2/3 majority vote to pass. All of those in favor of Article 7, please raise those orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange cards. And Article 7 passes by 2/3 majority. Article 8.
I move that the town vote to appropriate by transfer from free cash the sum of $70,000 to pay for expenses related to the fiscal year 2025 state certified revaluation as printed in the warrant. By way of explanation, the Department of Revenue requires an annual updating of property values, known as interim updates, as well as the regular state certification of values that is done every 5 years. The state certification is scheduled for fiscal year 2025, but the work has to be done during fiscal 2024. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article number 8? Okay, seeing none, Article number 8 requires a simple majority in order to pass. All of those in favor of Article number 8, please raise your orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange cards. And Article 8 passes by majority. Article 9.
I move the town vote to authorize the school committee to enter into a lease agreement for the placement of solar facilities on the roof of the Blanche A. Ames Elementary School located at 50 Spooner Street, Easton, Mass., and to purchase the solar-generated electricity under a power purchase agreement for a term of up to 30 years on terms it determines is in the best interest of the school department and to do so in coordination with the select board. By way of explanation, the town of Easton is exploring the feasibility of solar panels on the roof of the new Blanche A. Ames Elementary School, which was designed to support the installation of a ballasted solar array. Similar to the contractual arrangements undertaken for the solar arrays at the middle school and high school, the town would bear no capital infrastructure costs and instead purchase the solar generation at a discount and receive credits to reduce overall utility costs and carbon footprinting. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article number 9? Seeing none, Article 9 requires a simple majority. All of those in favor of Article 9, please raise that orange card. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. And Article 9 passes by majority. Article 10.
I move that the town vote to rescind $30,000 of the borrowing authorized under Article 15 of the May 2019 annual town meeting as printed in the warrant. By way of explanation, this housekeeping article removed the remaining balance of $30,000 left over from the original $185,000 authorization, which was not borrowed and will otherwise remain on the books indefinitely. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 10? Article 10, seeing none, Article 10 needs a simple majority. All of those in favor of Article 10, please raise your orange card. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. And Article 10 passes by majority. Article 11.
Good evening. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $251,016.61 from free cash for the purpose of funding future opioid remediation and abatement strategies in accordance with the state subdivision agreement.
Second.
By way of explanation, the town has received $251,016.61 this fiscal year in connection with the national opioid settlement. An appropriation is required to spend the funds on remediation and abatement strategies in accordance with the settlement agreement. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 11? Seeing none, Article 11 requires a simple majority. All of those in favor, please raise those orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange cards. And Article 11 passes by majority. Article 12.
I move that the town vote in accordance with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to reserve for later appropriation additional monies by transfer from the fiscal year 2023 annual budgeted reserve for the purposes printed in the warrants in each item to be considered a separate appropriation.
Second.
By way of explanation, the Community Preservation Fund receives a supplemental state trust fund distribution of $148,044 in January 2023, which needs to be reserved in each of the 3 spending categories to meet legal requirements. The amount to be reserved in each category is $14,804, with each item to be considered a separate appropriation. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends.
Okay, so before going to any questions, comments, or concerns, we have a presentation from Mr. Broussard.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and good evening again, everybody. It's really a privilege to be here on behalf of my fellow Community Preservation Committee members, on behalf of the town support people, our applicants, and certainly residents, you yourselves, your efforts and engagement. I'm incredibly appreciative, and thank you. For those of you that don't know, the Community Preservation Committee is the steward for the Community Preservation Act, which is actually a state of Massachusetts piece of legislation that was enacted into state law in September of 2000. Candidly, it's a tool that I think reflects the values of Easton almost as best as possible, and I know I'm biased being the chair. But what it does do is it is tasked with focusing on 3 primary areas of funding from a capital perspective: the preservation of open space and development of outdoor recreation facilities, the creation and preservation of affordable housing, the preservation and restoration of historic resources. And I can't think of 3 things that the town of Easton values deeply, and I would certainly also add in the kids in schools without a question. The part of the incentive economically to do it is that the state provides a matching fund mechanism. And so far to date, for every single dollar that we, the residents of Easton, have contributed, the state has matched it with 49 cents. And that's impactful when you see on the next slide the amount of dollars that we're talking about. The Community Preservation Committee is made up of citizen volunteers to oversee the budget, applications, and projects. We are truly a cross-collaborative team. We have representation from the Recreation Committee, for example, Historical Commission, from the Conservation Commission. We have representation from affordable housing. So just, again, a incredible cross-section, I think, of our town. And I would argue it also espouses the democracy that the town meeting brings to the forefront that our elected legislators pointed out, because the applications come from you, the residents. They can come from anywhere. And so if you're not understanding about how the process to submit an application for CPC support is, I ask you to please go to our website. You can find it on the town. But we really represent the applications that you see before you from the residents and from the offices and the institutions in this town directly. So Easton was an early adopter. We were very quick in 2001. There are now 195 towns and cities across Massachusetts that participate. It reflects a 3% property tax surcharge. The low income and first $100,000 are exempt. Lastly, I want to point out that the articles you're about to hear more information on, Articles 12 through 19, are all CPC articles, and they have been unanimously supported by both the CPC, the Finance Committee, the Select Board, and also the subcommittees that I mentioned, whether it was recreation, or affordable housing, so on and so forth. And I would attribute that to, candidly, high-quality applications. We really appreciate the effort that people put forth. We meet with an applicant 4 times. It's a very thorough process. And each time we meet, we have an opportunity to engage, provide direction, counsel, and I think what that represents is a quality product that all of those boards and committees unanimously supported. So really proud of the applications and the process overall. Next slide. This is just a slice of Easton. So since 2001 when we joined, Easton has contributed $35.4 million, or generated $35.4 million total, comprised of $21.3 million of local property taxes, $10.4 million of matching state funds that were given, and also we've generated $3.7 million of investment income and interest, so on and so forth. And since 2001, you, the residents of our town, have supported dozens of meaningful projects that incredibly impact the landscape of our community, totaling $29.6 million. Some of those projects you could see at the bottom, and that's okay that we went by, but I'm sure you recall Exames Memorial Hall, items like Keach Fields, great affordable housing projects, awesome historic preservation. Pickleball courts has been here for a couple years in conversation. So those are just some great examples of some of the meaningful projects we've been able to impact our community by. So Article 12, just by way of explanation, as I mentioned, there are 3 key criteria that the CPC has to keep in its purview. The state mandates that we allocate 10% minimum of our funds to each of them, whether it's open space, historic resources, or community housing / affordable housing. And what we received from Article 12 was supplemental funding, so extra money from the state after the fact, totaling $148,000. And by definition, we have to allocate 10% of that to our 3 pieces. And as you can see, that's $14,804. So again, thank you to our elected legislation. We will always take extra money after the fact. We'll take a lot at the beginning, anytime you want to give it. But in this case, it's a good thing, and we're just putting it in the right buckets into the reserve so we can spend it on those very important pieces.
So with that presentation, does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 12? Okay, seeing none, Article 12 requires a simple majority. All of those in favor of Article 12, please raise your orange card. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. And Article 12 passes by a majority. Article 13.
I move the town vote to appropriate or reserve from the Community Preservation Fund annual reserves the amounts recommended by the Community Preservation Committee for administrative expenses, community preservation projects, the payment of debt service, and other expenses in fiscal year 2024, with each item to be considered a separate appropriation, all as printed in the warrant.
Second.
By way of explanation, this article proposes that the fiscal year 2024 budget for the Community Preservation Committee amounts to be funded shall be considered separate appropriations. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
CPC.
Next slide, please. Oh, recommend, sorry.
And
I
now,
was holding out until I could get my words. Apologize. So when we hear a town meeting vote, we vote on the expense or the appropriations, which is the next slide. I did want you to understand, though, the revenues that we get each year. Essentially, we are estimated to collect $1.685 million in contributions from the tax base. Interest in other income is about $50,000, that's estimated. And then we estimate matching funds from the state at $500,000. Again, please don't take that number back, elected officials. That's only 30% of the contributions of the residents, and we average 49% historically. But as those of you know with budgeting, you want to be conservative when you open. So that's how we arrived at the $500,000 in estimated matching funds from the state. So the total revenues that we're projecting to get in FY24 is $2.235 million. The next slide is actually Article 13, and this really just speaks to the appropriations or the expenses that we incur. From an administrative expense perspective, it's $111,750, which is 5% of the revenues, for those of you that are keeping track with math. That also is set by the state legislature, but for us, we use it to partially fund a position that does an incredible amount of work for the CPC, and then it also supports some design, application review experts that we want to bring in. So when we get an applicant with a complicated set of fact patterns, we also have the monies available to do our own fact checking. So it's a small amount to do that. And then we also have debt service. So we have $602,000 worth of debt, satisfying 5 or 6 projects, I believe, that are currently on the borrowing capacity. So that's something that the CPC does as well. We have the right and the authority given by you folks with your vote to go out and appropriate borrow debt to fund some of our projects.
thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 13? Seeing none, Article 13 requires a simple majority. All of those in favor, please raise those orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. And Article 13 passes by majority. Article 14.
I move that the town vote in accordance with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to appropriate the sum of $223,500 from Community Preservation Fund Fiscal 2024 annual reserves to be transferred to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Second.
By way of explanation, this article would fund the Affordable Housing Trust activities for fiscal year 2024. The trust works to implement the goals and strategies of Easton's state-mandated housing production plan and to provide resources and affordable housing options to low and moderate income residents. Fiscal year 2024 activities will include support for a nonprofit developer to create affordable family housing on Quanticut Avenue and Morris Road, and support for planning work and related administration for the town to meet its Chapter 40B requirements. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
CPC.
CPC recommends.
Mr. Broussard, will you make a presentation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so Article 14 reflects the requirement that we allocate 10% of our funds to affordable housing and the creation of what I believe is very important, diversity, in this case economic diversity. So while it's an allocation of 10%, please don't take that as it's just a line item. There's a lot of incredible work that's going on. The Affordable Housing website, if you haven't seen it, has a tremendous plan, and they are truly making a difference. In this particular year, the funding would go to support Morse Road, Pequannock Ave, housing, affordable housing, 40B compliance and monitoring, and then planning for affordable family and senior housing. So just again, they do incredible work. I encourage you to go and look that up and try to find a way to make an impact and help if you can.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 14? Okay, seeing none, Article 14 requires a simple majority. All of those in favor, please raise those orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. And Article 14 passes by majority. Article 15.
I move that the town vote in accordance with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to appropriate the sum of $276,000 for recreational improvements and carriage house renovations at the Governor Ames Estate, and that to meet this appropriation, $228,430 shall be raised from Community Preservation Fund fiscal year 2024 annual revenues, and $47,570 shall be transferred from community preservation funds reserved for historic resources. By way of explanation, this article would contribute $276,000 of CPA funds to an approximately $835,000 project to create a flexible and accessible recreational gathering space that can be used for public programming and community events, renovate the circa 1860 carriage house to upgrade mechanical systems and add accessible bathrooms, and make other infrastructure improvements that preserve the historic character of the Governor Ames Estate landscape, which is owned and managed by the trustees of the reservation's nonprofit organization. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
CPC.
CPC recommends. Just take a brief moment. So I think we laid it out nicely, but one of the gems in this town historically certainly is the Governor Ames Estate. We at the CPC have been very fortunate to partner with the trustees who have done an incredible job at preserving that asset, and I would argue enhancing it. You'll all recall last year that you generously supported the purchase of the Pond Street Island property, which abuts the Governor Ames Estate. We're working with the trustees so that they can oversee that, again, adding space and capability and capacity to that particular area, which I think, hopefully those of you, all of us have been there, is just an incredible place. It's getting more use. This is designed, their overall program, the $276,000 is a portion of a $800,000 plus project, whereby they've actually taken down the house now at this point that was there, not getting use. They're putting up a tent pavilion to enable a lot more utilization. Think of weddings, think of finding a place underneath the sun, and by adding amenities like a bathroom, preserving this historic gem of a carriage house, upgrading the mechanical systems, it makes it even easier for the residents of Easton to go and enjoy, whether you have kids or whether you're yourself for your own stroll. It's just an incredible place downtown in Easton for all the people that live there, a dense neighborhood, providing that nice walking area, as we all do, preserving our open space, I think is just incredible. So the CPC and again, all of the committees unanimously supported this.
Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 15? Okay, seeing none, Article 15 requires a simple majority. All of those in favor, please raise your orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. And Article 15 passes by majorities. Article 16.
Good evening. I move that the town vote in accordance with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to appropriate the sum of $30,000 for Community Preservation Fund fiscal 2024 annual revenues to create, design, construction, and bid documents for Swifts Park.
Second.
By way of explanation, the resident volunteers of the Swift Park Steering Committee are charged with redeveloping and rededicating this small town-owned park at the Pequannock Avenue and Foundry Street intersection in Southeastern's Furnace Village National Register Historic District as both a neighborhood amenity and as a site honoring those who died in the 1918 influenza pandemic and the COVID-19 pandemic, and the first responders who cared for them. Using $10,000 of planning department funds and $25,000 of CPA administration funds, the steering committee has procured a consultant to begin the public planning process. This requested $30,000 of CPA grant will fund creation of a final park design and the associated bid-ready construction plans, specifications, and cost estimates, which will support future private and public fundraising for construction, likely including CPA funds. The committee's intention is for the redevelopment to coincide with Easton's 300th anniversary celebrations in 2025.
Select Board.
Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
CPC.
The CPC recommends. And just a brief moment, while a smaller amount than perhaps some other articles at $30,000, I happen to be very partial to this particular article. The reason is I think it truly represents some of the incredible journey that projects take, not just from the CPC perspective. You'll recall last year we asked and you funded the support for the preservation of a historic fence. That's right across the street from this property. Swift Park is right on the other side. This is the next step from a CPC perspective in preserving and enhancing assets along that corridor. But it also represents the journey that you, the residents, have supported for the town across 106, whether it's having sewer put in, whether it's zoning, planning, the neighborhoods that we've created, whether it's the Target Economic Plaza and creative efforts there. So that's one of the reasons why we like Swift Park. This is just for the design and the construction docks, but it's an incredible opportunity to provide a stopping point along the way that hopefully will be a walking corridor all the way from Target to Five Corners. So this takes an incredibly long amount of time and effort to stick with it, to create a brand new corridor of engagement for the town. And I look forward to seeing what 106 becomes, and hence why I think Swift Park has an important role to play in that.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 16?
Hi, Sarah Morrison, 31 Beaver Dam Road. I'd like to know the total acreage of that park.
That is a fantastic question. How much?
About a third of an acre.
About a third of an acre from Ed Hands. Knows his history.
So can somebody explain how a third of an acre with no access at current time, walking on any sidewalks, in an extremely busy intersection, could potentially be a neighborhood amenity? By the way, it's my neighborhood.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic question. And actually, I think it leads into the comment I made on the front end, which is the importance of steps of planning. So what's envisioned and was supported in the capital budget that we just voted on was $300,000 to fund the studies that are necessary to widen 106 and to add pedestrian walkways along the side. Without that funding, we wouldn't be able to apply for the state or federal? For federal funds that would support the development there. Also, as you're in the neighborhood, as am I live off of Quanticket. The development that's at the end of Quanticket, intersection of 106, that's being done there, is also being designed to have a light that's present there. And lastly, it's thoughtful growth and development. We are looking to find ways, instead of having people fly right through there, which may have been the want, especially when you're coming from Mansfield and a 50-mile-an-hour area there, that you can thoughtfully design your structures, whether it's walkways, whether it's greenery, to slow down traffic and make it much more of a walking area, so that what it does is, using that new neighborhood that's built, Avalon, the density of people, they can now walk and access all of the economic activity that's there, whether it's McGuire's or whether it's La Familia across the way. And now along that walk, they have New Pond, Old Pond, they can stop and see that. And also you can enjoy you'll see historical preservation in terms of the fence. There'll be information about that and why it's important to the heritage of Easton. And Swift Park would be an opportunity to enhance that and provide another stopping area.
Last question, are there any estimates of the total cost of what you're envisioning?
I don't believe I have an estimate at this time. That's what this money would fund, the design and the construction plans, which would then inform the cost and bidding process.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the questions.
Hi, Lisa Hurley, 8 Carriage House Lane. She actually asked one of my questions, but I have a second question about process. If we were to not vote for this amount for this park, would it mean it could be repurposed to some of the other projects you have here, like the playground?
So if you didn't vote to support this with this $30,000 ask for the construction and design documents. So it's
To
not.
be a little more direct, can I bake less cookies if I don't do the 30,000 and move it to the playground?
Gotcha. So A, I would ask you to bake all the cookies you can regardless, because we can always use it.
No one wants me to do that.
But B, that would be a separate process. So we as the CPC have designed how to fund those articles. You can certainly, as a group of residents, vote down the support of this article. And again, it's not voting for the park, it's voting to support the design and construction documents that would be necessary to understand that project more and make a more informed decision at that point in time. It's not a take from here to give to there type aspect.
All right, thanks.
Hi, Dale Carrister, 21 South Street. I happen to be a member of the Swift Park Committee, so I've been integrally involved in a lot of the hard work that's been going into this project. But more importantly, as a resident of 21 South Street, I'm right around the corner. I've been a resident since 1993. I know this area very well. I walk through that area all the time to go over to Old Pond. There's some beautiful trails back there. I encourage you to go back if you haven't. Our area's been through quite a lot, frankly. The Five Corners area, as many of you know, we've had the sewer project. Each one of the residents has been assessed a betterment of, for an average 2 to 4 bedroom home, of $19,987, if I remember correctly, or somewhere thereabouts. And part of that is for the sewer, is to help with the economic development of the town. And folks ultimately supported that. And the businesses are paying even more in terms of what they were required to pay for the sewer project. We're asking for your support for this. It's a small amount, and it will go a long way towards enhancing the livability and walkability of this area. And I think as we look forward, there are in the plans a lot of substantial improvements with, as I understand, an application for some Chapter 90 funding for Route 106, including the sidewalk. And this really can be a signature piece, or as you come in from Mansfield and before you get to Furnace Village and coming into Five Corners. So I'm asking for your support for this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ed Hans, 20 Purchase Street. I have my memorial park. They moved the monument and put a beautiful little park on the corner, much smaller than the Swiss Park thing. I'm the co-chair of the Swiss Park Committee. And if you stop and think about it, we have a number of these small pocket parks that are running right across the center of the town, starting with Alley's Park in Eastondale. You move on to the cemetery on Purchase Street, which our World War II memorial is located, or one of our World War II memorials is located. And then Monument Park with the Civil War Memorial. And then finally, we have a vacant area that used to be the home of the Easton Farmers Market, which is a potential spot for development as well. And then finally, as we move over to Mansfield, we have Swiss Park. So these little pocket parks are neighborhood parks. And John Ventresco, my co-chair, and I have gone back and forth with the DPW and the designers to deal with some of those issues of accessibility. And we believe now that the park will definitely be accessible from the Pequonnocket Street area where the new little housing development is going to go in. And if all goes well, the expenditure of Chapter 90 funds will provide sidewalks on the pond side, New Pond, Old Pond, all the way up to Target, which would make it accessible for a large number of people. It's going to be a wonderful park. It's really a park to ourselves. We've all been through a lot. Forget about, Furnace Village. They've been through plenty, but we've been through plenty as well. And we have also accrued a debt of gratitude, I think, to the first responders. We are very good about putting up memorials for our veterans, although it would be nice to have a Revolutionary War thing, but I'll get to that when the Tricentennial Committee comes in a couple of years. But it would be wonderful to have a memorial for our police, fire, and even, dare I say it, our school teachers who provided good services during the time of COVID.
So I urge you to support this. And my final thing I want to say is John and I have committed, particularly John, to going out and doing as much fundraising as possible among the various organizations in town in order to offset the cost of this so that it won't be excessive, we hope. Keep your fingers crossed. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 16? Okay, seeing none, Article 16 requires a simple majority. All of those in favor of Article 16 passing, please raise those orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange cards. And Article 16 passes by a majority. Article 17.
Just want to thank Ed for his color on Article 16. So Article 17, I move that the town vote in accordance with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to appropriate the sum of $60,000 to create a rehabilitation plan for the town hall's historic landscape, and that to meet this appropriation, $58,457 shall be transferred from surplus community preservation funds voted pursuant to Article 26 of the May 21st, 2012 annual town meeting, and that $1,543 should be transferred from surplus community preservation funds voted pursuant to Article 16 of the May 18th, 2015 annual town meeting. By way of explanation, this article would provide $60,000 in funding to create a plan for rehabilitating the grounds of Town Hall, built in 1912 as the Wayside Estate. In addition to facilitating improved drainage and more attractive and contextual parking and lighting, the effort will involve the public in creating a feasible and sustainable plan for renewing the historic estate's grounds, gardens, stone walls, and specimen plantings while encouraging more use and enjoyment of the 8.6-acre landscape beyond the former mansion and its immediate environment. Surplus article balances are from previous appropriations related to town hall preservation efforts. The town has received a $30,000 reimbursement grant from the Massachusetts Historical Commission, which will reduce total CPA funds expended. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
CPC?
CPC recommends, and just some brief information on it. We often think of Town Hall where we go and so much business is transacted and events occur. We sometimes forget that it's also a historical asset. And some great work has been done on the exterior that CPC funded last year. Looks incredible and made great progress. This, I think, is just the next logical step. The CPC is welcome to this investment. We think that the rehabilitation of the grounds outside will add value to the money that we invested for the exterior of the building itself. And I'll just use this as the opportunity. There are dozens of conversations that happen on any given application. One of the things that we always do is work with DPW and work with the town very closely on all of them. And we make sure we consider things like, can we maintain it? What type of plantings are we using? Are they drought resistant? And are there any other considerations that would add undue cost from an operating perspective on a go-forward basis? So just want to give credit to the DPW, Dave Fields, Greg Swan, just incredible partners to help us think through this so that we get the maximum benefit for all of our investment in terms of dollars, and we know that the town can make sure they can maintain wherever that investment goes. So it's appreciated. Thank you both.
Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 17? Okay, seeing none, Article 17 requires a simple majority. All of those in favor, please raise those orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange cards. And Article 17 passes by majority. Article 18.
So brief introduction, Articles 18 and 19 are, in our minds in the CPC, although they were separate applications, quickly became part of a larger opportunity that the CPC saw. We often ask our applicants regarding issues whether or not there are other asks, whether or not there are other projects, or there are other considerations. And so for a whole host of reasons that I hope I do a good job in illustrating for all of you tonight, these two articles came to mean a lot to the CPC in terms of the overall opportunity. First, in the next slide, you'll see an overview, don't go there yet, but when I get there, you'll see an overview of the entire campus of the school, and you will realize that with these two articles, we will actually be closing the loop, literally and figuratively, on some really key opportunities to finish the campus from an exterior and amenity perspective. Second of all, by combining projects at times, there are opportunities for cost efficiency. And so on the playgrounds, you'll note that we're doing the north and the south. Part of that is because there are cost efficiencies at times and considerations from that perspective. Lastly, I'll have an economic slide in this intro section that I think will be eye-opening for many of you. It was for me when I pulled it together to try to educate myself on how to monetize what the town of Easton has come to represent. There's a slide on that, and I believe that the schools, along with a lot of the values that the CPC espouses, and certainly all the norms and values the residents you represent, has created amazing value over time for our residents. And I think these particular two projects will add an incredible amount of momentum behind that. Like I mentioned, it is consistent with our core values, I think, both for us, the CPC, you as a broader resident base. And also, this was a misconception. As we went through the application process, we were very quickly asked, it seems like we do a lot of projects related to the school, or the town for that matter. And I can candidly say that this is the first significant community preservation funding request in the school area. To date, it's less than $1 million of the total ask of the 29.6 that we've expended. That's 2.8%. So I just want to dispel that notion from the front end that there are a tremendous amount of large asks that come. There aren't. And you'll actually, full candor in this one, we, the CPC, working with the applicant, actually asked for the North and the South Playground to be considered as one application rather than two pieces, because we believe in the project, we believe the value it will create. Next slide, please. I think this graphically illustrates what I may have done a poor job verbalizing. But if you look at the orange line that goes around, you'll see some incredible accomplishments that we've been able to string together as a community. On the south side, we've built some incredible fields on the south end. I know my daughter enjoys the softball field that's there immensely. If you circle now going up northeast, you'll see that it brings us to the tennis courts, basketball courts, and pickleball courts. That's Article 18, and when you get there, I will just show you the pictures that will do a far better representation of the challenges that we face there. Certainly now, up to the right, you have the Blanche Ames School, just an incredible accomplishment. I know if you have any friends that have moved to Easton recently, oftentimes, especially with kids at that age, they talk about that school. It is a magnet to draw people to come in and move to Easton, and it should be. We should be incredibly proud of that school. It's state-of-the-art. Now, if you start circling back to the west, you'll see that it brings us to the middle school and to RO, and you'll see those two currently paved parking lots right now. That's where the North and South Playground rehabilitation process and outdoor classroom is for Article 19. And then it brings us all the way with a connection to the Clifford Grant reservation, so it preserves our connection to outdoor space, and that brings you full circle back to the southern end of the high school. So of that entire circle loop, the two things that are primarily being addressed here are the aged, basketball, tennis courts, and the RO playground. So when I say campus connection, that's what I'm really bringing about, is that it enables a walking and community experience at this campus that will be top-notch, grade A. Next slide, please. Apologies for the numbers, but this is where I actually had an eye-opening experience. I'm not sure everybody appreciated this. So these numbers are pulled using information that's available to all of us. The Zillow Home Value Index, the link is there. If anybody can't see it, I'm happy to show it to them, but it's public data. I'm not sure everybody knew that of all of our surrounding communities from 2019 to 2022, that Easton home values have increased the most. Up 34%, or $147,000 in average value increase over 3 years. Not only that, we were first or second in year-over-year growth every single one of those years. And I'm not sure people appreciated that 2 of the 3 highest numbers on that entire grid are in the community of Easton. I think this resoundingly illustrates that what we value, what we believe in, what we've been able to execute, what we've been able to implement, what we teach our kids, the facilities we give them, the open space we care about, all the other values has put us in terms of the highest growth. So those are just numbers that can't be argued. I would also go to illustrate, if anybody saw the Boston Globe article recently, I think it came out a couple weeks ago, Easton is the second highest increasing community in terms of home value south of Boston. So whatever we're doing it right and we're doing it well, and people want to move here, home values continue to go up, that's real dollars in pockets. I think we all know that for most people, the home is the #1 asset that they have that will generate net worth for them over their lifetime. On the bottom, just again, I think it espouses what the CPA stands for and what we as residents value. I will point out 2 further pieces of information I came across. One is a National Bureau of Economic Research report using market valuation to assess public school spending. They found that for every single dollar spent on public schools, home values increased by $20. And the Brookings Institute and Wall Street Journal support the premise that school expenditures and school performance correlate to home value. Now, I'm not in any way, shape, or form signing up for a dollar of investment equals a $20 increase in value, but I did find it interesting that factual data represented in articles that I came across with some quality magazines and publishers that I respect and have come to appreciate as a business person in today's society. So I just thought this would be helpful for you to understand where Easton has come from over the last few years in terms of home values and creation of value. Give credit to everybody, by the way. I'm not trying to take that just for the CPC, but towns, schools, you as residents, everything that we do.
Okay.
Next up, Article 18.
I move that the town vote in accordance with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to appropriate the sum of $1,598,000 to construct new tennis, basketball, and pickleball courts, along with associated fencing, drainage, and other infrastructure at Oliver Ames High School, and that to meet this appropriation, $748,000 should be raised from Community Preservation Fund fiscal 2024 annual revenues, and $850,000 should be transferred from Community Preservation unreserved fund balance.
Second.
And I appreciate having to say the word bituminous, which I have no idea if that's right, but here it comes. This article would provide $1,598,000 in funding to build 5 new post-tension concrete tennis courts, 3 new bituminous. It's a type of concrete. Bituminous, thank you very much. Bituminous concrete basketball courts and 4 new bituminous concrete pickleball courts and associated fencing, drainage, and other infrastructure at Oliver Ames High School for use by both school students and, when available, the general public. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends.
CPC?
CPC recommends. I think we covered most of the items on the left-hand side. I do want to point out a couple things. Applicants come before the CPC. We really are focused on generating the maximum return that we can for the investment that we make. The ask that we had, the difference between post-tension concrete tennis courts and bituminous concrete basketball courts, candidly, is quality and longevity. The post-tension concrete tennis courts are designed to last an incredibly longer period of time, I think upwards of 25 years, where the average lifespan of an asphalt, the current installation, is perhaps at best 10 to 12. I do want to just point out a couple things. One is from a pickleball perspective, certainly have been asked why more pickleball. We just had a CPC meeting where residents of the town joined the CPC meeting asking us to engage on the pickleball courts at Unionville to help support soundproofing and sound mitigating measures. Because you see, it starts activity there as soon as the sun comes up, and it continues until literally the sun is down and the final game wraps up. It's a long day for those people. It's a lot of utilization of that asset, which is great. But it is leading to overcrowding there. There's parking on the actual grass field that's going on at times, parking on the basketball courts at times, and we have just an incredible amount of appeal for pickleball. The other thing that I think is important, the applicant themselves appreciated the opportunity to draw people that might not otherwise come to the campus to come and experience all the great things that are going on in this campus. And having, I guess, a pickleball experience is something that is different. It can draw a different demographic. And I think it truly demonstrates the applicant's desire to have a community-wide benefit for both of Article 18 and 19 that was very present in their dialogue and appreciated by the CPC as we seek to maximize value for all of the residents in the community. I do want to just point out something else. Please don't think that because we're replacing something, it wasn't because we repaired it. I learned an incredible amount of detail about the required pamphlets, manuals, and adherence requirements for maintaining assets that we build. So credit, again, to our DPW, to the town, to the schools. These assets were well maintained. The repairs, as you'll see in the next few pictures, are self-evident. And at a certain point, you just can't fix it. And that's really candidly what has happened here. So we believe we've got better quality courts that are going in that will attract more people. We did connect with the applicant and with the safety considerations with the police and fire to ensure that any safety considerations, congestion, parking, items that might be normal questions you might have regarding a project like this on this campus were satisfied. And so I give credit to that collaborative nature of all the departments and appreciate everyone's efforts there. Thank you, chiefs, Dr. Cabral, and applicants. So if we could, I'd just rather show the pictures. Hopefully this shows you in 1,000 words, but the cracks are evident. The tennis courts are at risk for us to not be able to have the high school team play on them anymore and be competitive in the league. So we're trying to get ahead of that. And I think you can see all the cracks. And if anybody's playing that game of which of these two images are alike, there are two that are alike. They just happen to especially illustrate the problem. So you caught me with two of the same pictures. So the amount requested for this is $1.6 million, as we talked about. We think it's a worthy investment. We think it's a high-quality return. And so with that, you can see a schematic. There will be 4 pickleball courts at the front, 3 basketball courts, the same number that are present, and replacement of the same 5 courts. And I do want you to appreciate we holistically engage with the applicant, so we don't put new courts down and don't consider the fence, for example. If the door is broken and you can't get in, the new courts won't be so helpful. So it was a thoughtful project, always trying to manage costs, but getting the maximum amount of benefit for the community and the return on the investment.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 18?
Liz Bornstein, 31 Walden Drive. What's currently where the pickleball courts are?
So that's actually a basketball court. So there are 3 basketball courts. One is where the pickleball courts are, and 2, as you look at the image on the left, where the basketball court is being pivoted is to where there is a lesser used sand volleyball pit that was privately donated in years past and is starting to reach the end of its useful life. And so we think this would maximize the use by pivoting a basketball court over to that and adding 4 pickleball courts to the front.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate the question.
Yeah.
Please.
Meredith Keach, 11 Foundry Street. I'm here tonight as a voting resident, but also I'm the recreation representative on the Community Preservation Commission, and want you to know that this went through many boards and folks design concept conversations, and I certainly advocate for it, and I hope you'll consider funding this because it's something that's needed, and the applicant had also indicated to us that we have to make sure that we're MIA compliant. So that, particularly with our tennis courts, that the athletes can continue to play on them. And pickleball, as I'm sure most of you are aware, is one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. As the Chairman Broussard indicated, the courts up at Unionville are widely used. I've myself actually taking lessons, second one tomorrow. It's really fun, easy to play, and what these courts will do, and when I think Chairman Broussard talks about the Richardson Olmsted Playground, is what was really considered in the funding and building of the outdoor active recreation space here was community use at large. So where the children and the students of the community will use this during their school day, the community at large can use it outside. You can even, there's a beautiful walking path that's going to encompass it, and on weekends, afternoons, all of the time that we all probably experienced over the last couple of years, I think we all realize how important active recreation is, and this is what the community is building for itself. So I certainly hope that you'll consider this article and vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah Morrison, 31 Beaver Dam. A couple of quick questions. What is the parking consideration?
Yep, so great question. We did ask that in a collaborative way to ensure the safety aspect. So currently parking is a little bit more crowded, maybe a lot bit more crowded than people might normally expect. I know we drop off and pick up our daughter from that parking lot from RO, but largely that is caused right now by administrative team parking from the Blanche Ames project, because not all of the parking there is open. And so once that opens, it will alleviate a lot of the challenges that might be present currently. And in asking all of the different organization's safety aspect, parking should be fine in terms of the amount of use that it gets.
And to accommodate senior citizens, is there potential for handicap parking near the pickleball?
I think that's a great idea, and I think when we go to design and implement, that should be a consideration we keep in mind. And I'm looking at the applicant who is nodding their head, so appreciate that call out.
To that point, will there be any reserved times or recommended times for senior citizens, especially during school day hours?
I think that's a great question. I will defer that, though, to the Rec Commission. They have purview over the use of courts, both from a time perspective. I'm not sure if that can be done candidly. I'm just not familiar with that. But if it's okay, I'll look at Meredith Keach, who is just up, and ask that we consider it when the Rec Commission meets on this, to consider that particular aspect. I'm not sure if it can be done, but I can give you my word that we'll certainly look into it.
Great. Just one other point I wanted to make, and I do support recreation over a lot of things, but when we were talking about school expenditures on education, you had made the points about, a draw to our community. I just want to remind us that school expenditure really, we need to focus more on education. And I know that Community Preservation Act funding isn't necessarily a place where we can put it into our educators, but the fact that we, the 7:30 hour, Mr. Reed, you were talking about how grateful you were to the union for holding at 3%. I don't necessarily think it's something we should be so proud of, that we're only funding teachers at 3%. So when we think about our overall budgets, we shouldn't be bragging about 3% for educators. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you. I do want to point out, and I appreciate that call out, because it is important to understand what the CPC can and can't do. So the CPC is not a capital arm of the town or the schools. We're governed by the CPA charter, and we have to accept applications that we can receive. We can't support operating expenses, but we are thoughtful that what we do can have an impact on the operations of our town and on the residents of our town. So I appreciate the opportunity to illustrate the difference, and certainly appreciated your commentary regarding the operating budget.
Suzanne Bump, 6 Hoshop Street. Following up on the gentle lady's questions and Mr. Broussard, your own comments relative to the CPC use, which is community benefit, outdoor recreation for the community at large. You mentioned, so I'm confused as to who's going to have jurisdiction over these courts. Is this because the stipulation, as indicated in the article, they will be available to the public when available? When would that be? I imagine you can't use them during the school day. After school is practice. Matches take place on weekends. And so, frankly, where's the public benefit? I see the school students' benefit, which, frankly, I don't think is contemplated under the Community Preservation Act purposes, but I don't see the public benefit given the amount of time that school kids are going to be using them.
Thank you for the question, Suzanne. So I'll try to answer that succinctly. I do think benefiting children and residents of our town is important. And then I think the best way to illustrate it is that the basketball courts and the tennis courts are currently there now. They get utilized by the broader community. I know that the Easton Youth Basketball League uses those courts at times, for example. The tennis courts get used. So you're spot on in terms of primary use. Right, they're on a school campus and they're being utilized by the school. They are the applicant. They stepped up and took the time and effort to reach out. And recreation is absolutely on a school campus supported by the CPC. So there is nothing untoward about that. It's appropriate and common. So the application is valid without a doubt. The enhancement of adding pickleball courts when they're not used, I think is another opportunity to draw people. I won't speak to the exact times and the days of when the current courts are utilized, but I know that the community benefits widely from them, that the tennis courts get use when I'm there on Saturdays and Sundays, the basketball courts. I know that there are lights there so they get use at nights, and I know that there are long stretches, whether it's school vacation or summer vacation, where no students are there that they could get utilized. There are programs that the school runs that use them as well for the broader community, So while I can't speak to the exact times myself, I'm sure that will be hashed out or further delineated. But when they're available, the pickleball courts can be used, just like the tennis courts and the basketball courts are now.
But I asked you, so who has jurisdiction, the school department or the recreation department?
Sorry, I believe it's the school department because it's on the school campus.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Denise Higgins for New Pondway. I support this article. The predecessor speaker stole my fire in saying that what we really do need is we need more of these facilities, and stealing my fire, I just want to solidify that thought, and that the school system is going to be the benefactor, or the school children will be the benefactor of this. And coming forward, we need to take a look at our growing population, and there are a lot of people of our size and age that will enjoy and still enjoy some of these. So she made a very valid point, excuse me, that during the school day, this will be off limits for the most part for the general population. And we have a very active school population that extends beyond the school day. So I want to put this out to the general population to make sure that the population outside of the school system is recognized. And additionally, that when CPA money is used, that we also look at the growing number of our other population. Thank you.
Thank you.
Denise, we appreciate that comment and we agree. So one of the things that happened leading up to town meeting this year, although separate from a town meeting appropriation, is that the Recreation Commission voted to authorize $50,000 of their existing funds to start a recreation and specifically active recreation master planning process for exactly the reason you've identified that. We tremendously appreciate the project-by-project approach at town meeting, where folks have been really supportive of CPA articles as they pertain to rec, but we recognize that as we move forward as a community, that we need to do a better job proactively laying out exactly those things. And so that project we hope to put out to bid this summer and involve the community significantly come post-Labor Day and do a lot of charrette planning and citizen input sessions to hear what are the assets you use today? What do you like? What are some challenges that exist there? What are programmatic needs that we're not meeting? Where are some opportunities that we can invest in those and use that process to identify what those needs are and inform future capital and CPAS? So to your point, we're meeting the needs of folks trying to recreate of all demographics and ages. So thank you.
William Palmer, 402 Center Street. The high school track and football field are there all day, and I know that people use it all day long. And that part of the school, as far as I know, nothing really opens from the school onto that part. It's not like there's classrooms there. And people use those tennis courts and basketball courts now during the day. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be rare occasions where they're going to take the kids out to learn pickleball or to play basketball outside, but they already have basketball inside. But I don't understand why the school department wouldn't be able to get together and just post signs up saying when it's being used.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 18? Okay, seeing none, Article 18 requires a simple majority. All of those in favor of Article 18, please raise those orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange cards. And Article 18 passes by majority. Article 19.
I don't see any bituminous concrete. We should get through this. Thank you. I move that the town vote in accordance with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to appropriate the sum of $3,500,000 pursuant to the Community Preservation Act to construct new playgrounds and outdoor classrooms at Richardson Olmsted School. And to meet this appropriation, $291,735 shall be raised from Community Preservation Fund fiscal 2024 annual revenues. $1,708,265 should be transferred from Community Preservation unreserved fund balance, and that the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow $1,500,000 under Massachusetts general laws, chapter 44B, subsection 11, or any other enabling legislation, provided that in accordance with chapter 44, section 20 of the general laws, the premium received by the town upon the sale of any bonds or notes thereunder, less any such premium applied to the payment of the cost of issuance of such bond or notes may be applied to pay project costs, and the amount authorized to be borrowed for each such project shall be reduced by the amount of any such premium so applied, and to authorize the select board to do or take all actions necessary to carry out this project on behalf of or in the name of the town.
Second.
By way of explanation, this article would provide $3,500,000 in funding to build new north and south playgrounds at Richton Olmsted School. The new playgrounds will be ADA compliant and will provide play structures including swings and ball courts, activity and dining tables, shaded seating, a fitness course, outdoor classroom areas, and low-maintenance plantings and green space. The new facilities will connect with the rest of the school campus and with the adjacent Clifford Grant Conservation Area, and will be available outside of school hours for Easton children and their families and friends, as well as for use by the Easton Recreation Department. The school department has used $153,000 of operating funds for design work and has secured an additional $285,000 of state and private funding. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
CPC?
CPC recommends. I think I've covered a lot of these key points and lead up to this. I'll focus on the right-hand side. As we talked about, this is the last piece. Appreciate your support for Article 18. Article 19, it would be the last connection of the campus, so to speak. This would be ADA compliant, connects to the Clifford Grant Conservation Area. We do believe it would be more cost effective to build the north and the south together. And it's certainly available outside school hours for children, families, friends, rec department use. The Blanche Ames project, I think, had a bearing on this. It showed us what possible looked like, what bright looked like. It also gave us the possibility to leverage all of the learnings that came from that. We leveraged the applicant leveraged the same design firm, for example, that had met hours with residents to understand what we value, what we need, what the educators value, what we need. And so it saved a lot of time and a lot of effort. So that's where you see we leverage the current Blanche Ames Elementary School project reducing time and design. I'd like to invite Principal Mr. Chris Getchell up of RO. We're going to walk through just a few next slides. I'll let him walk you through the current vision that we have on the next slide and what the schematics look like ultimately when it's designed. And at the end, there's just a couple topics and issues that I'll add on to, I think, cover some key points that have come up during the resident review process. Mr. Getchell?
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. It's an honor to speak in front of town meeting tonight. I've been serving proudly as principal of Easton for 13 years. And I'd be definitely remiss if I didn't, just say a few quick just tokens of appreciation to the town. There's a reason I think I've been principal 13 years. My fellow administrators have been here a while. Dr. Cabral has served. Superintendent first, assistant superintendent before that. And our outstanding teachers in Easton, most of them, all of them I have the privilege of supporting every day. Many of them have been here for a long time and they don't leave. And the reason why I think is definitely the commitment to this town, to our schools. It has been just overwhelming since the day I arrived, and it continues to be. So before I get to this, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you all for your support during my time here. So we are looking at right now the RO school, and behind it a lot of concrete. And we have two existing rope structures, some older basketball courts. We also have cracks throughout our pavement. And I speak not only for the 800 students at RO that play on this every single day, also the over 800 students at the middle school that would certainly benefit every day from the renovation of this space. If you look at the north side, that is the middle school that we abut, and a lot of our outdoor classroom, more quiet spaces would be between RO and middle school, so we wouldn't impact the education there. I also want to say that from the get-go of this application, I know Mr. Broussard, Dr. Cabral, and all the people that worked on this, we see this as a community project, not a school project. Our schools are in session 180 days of the year. We have 365 days of the year. So we want to make our school campus a hub of the community, a place where all residents can feel comfortable coming. We want grandparents to bring their grandchildren to our schools and dream about going there someday. This is very much taking advantage of what we consider a very safe, beautiful part of our town, making it accessible to everybody. So I really view this as more of a community project than just a school project. Next slide. So this is a close-up view of between RO and the middle school. This is the north playground, where I said earlier, we hope to add outdoor classrooms. We really believe in getting kids' hands really actually dirty. I think one of the proud part of Easton is our rich agricultural history. I think it's important to teach kids like where their food comes from, and I think that should be part of learning. I also think kids biologically need to be outside and running and moving around, not just inside for 6.5 hours a day all day. I think it's healthy for them mentally and physically to have safe, vibrant outdoor spaces to grow and learn. And we look forward to doing a lot of that in our outdoor classroom that we look to share with the middle school, outdoor seating, and a big active play area and bus pickup. And you can see that red line that goes through is emergency access that we're planning for. So if we ever needed our wonderful first responders to come for any reason, they would have access between the buildings. Next slide. This is a closer up view of that same playground, what it would look like. You can see the access road that would be look more like kind of like a river. We really wanted a natural look to the outside. A lot of greenery connecting to the Clifford Grant Reservation area. So we're mindful of that. You can see swings, 3 basketball courts, an obstacle course area, outdoor garden, gazebo, as I said earlier. Next slide. And now we're switching over to the south side. This is behind the Richardson wing, across from OA. We intend this space to be more open, more grass, more area for kids to run around and play in general. So it's a lot more wide open space. And in addition, we have an expanding health and PE department in Easton Public Schools, which we're proud of. We want to have an outdoor PE and health place as well as an indoor gym for our students. And we really believe deeply in the importance of the mental and physical health of our kids. We talked a little bit about physical security, which obviously is really important to us, but it's a two-pronged approach when raising kids, I think, and keeping our schools safe. We got to keep our kids mentally and physically safe as well. So, we're really excited about the possibilities back here. All right, next slide. And that's a better view of what that Richardson side would look like with a larger field, like a mini soccer field. It's less, I'm told it's slightly less than a regular soccer field, 3 basketball courts, the existing rope structure, and you see that access road that looks like a river for emergency responders. Okay, I think that's it.
Awesome. I just have 2 items to discuss.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ketchel. So in the course of the application process, 2 key questions were asked to the CPC that weren't presented here in the materials that I think it's appropriate to bring before you so that we're all transparent and can understand all of the facts. One of those is that in these schematics, there is a product that's called poured in place. And that poured in place rubber environment is designed to create safety, cushion, ADA compliance. The ingredients of that poured in place, the subcomponents at the very bottom, contain PFAS. And I think it's important that we recognize that that chemical is in that. It's encapsulated in the top layer, so it's designed to prevent skin-to-skin contact with it, but it is present. The PFAS, for those of you that don't know, if you don't, I think it's important that we use this as an educational opportunity. It's a long-lasting chemical that breaks down slowly over time, according to the EPA. It's really also called a forever chemical. It is everywhere. It is not just in our town. It is not just in our state. It's not just in our nation. It is global. And this chemical, there are thousands of the variants. And honestly, we are taking steps as a community. We are leading engagement. And I want to thank the resident of our town in my case, who makes me keenly aware of the concerns, health potential impacts, and the steps that we need to do to proactively take part of it. This project has 9% of that, and I want you to know that thoughtful consideration that that chemical is present limited the amount of utilization that the applicant put into the overall project. That's important. The encapsulation layer that goes on top is replaceable. We can put it back in. This project is not in a watershed. I just want to make sure you know that. Drinking water is one of the predominant ways that it very quickly gets into the human system, and this particular area is not designated as watershed. That said, it's incredibly important to test. There were poured-in-place fields that were put in Washington, D.C., that when tested came back as having incredibly high levels of lead, had to be ripped out. We're making sure that we're doing testing to ensure that there are no of those harmful heavy metals that are in this. We did, as a result of this being raised as an issue, look at 2 alternative technologies with the applicant. One was a product called Corkine, which is made of natural cork. The second is engineered wood fibers, which is, I call wood chips, but I'm sure engineered wood fibers might be slightly different, but that's what it is. And for a variety of reasons, wood chips, for example, is a challenge. In order to be ADA compliant, the surface has to be smooth, and maintaining wood chips to be smooth and level can be a challenge, and it could be a cost for maintenance, and it's something that you would do regularly every day in our environment. Corkine has a challenge in terms of being able to shovel off of without ripping up the natural substance, some issues and examples of mold, for example. So all of this is to say that we are trying to be as thoughtful as we have. We take resident feedback when it's given seriously, and we try to use it to inform the project wherever possible to get to a better outcome. I do want to point out that just because this project has been unanimously supported to this point by the Finance Committee, the Select Board, CPC, Recreation Committee, that we don't think that PFAS doesn't matter. I think we spoke about it, but the town of Easton has been a leader. I'm not sure if everybody knows, but there was one town, one municipality, that was asked to join a state intra-agency task force. That was Easton. We are recognized as the forefront of PFAS consideration. There is no state mandate funding guidance, federal funding guidance. We are taking the lead. The water department provides filters for each of our individual homes that you can call them and ask, and that will help filter PFAS out. We are building 2 wells that come online this summer. 2 filtration systems that come online this summer that address PFAS in 3 of our wells. It's an incredibly important topic. And I think any area or time that we can use to educate people on this particular aspect is critical. So we just want to be transparent, we want to be thoughtful, informed of this project. I became smarter because of it, and I think the town of Easton wouldn't be leading in the ways that it is if we didn't have the advocacy on this issue that we do in this town. So with that, I'll pause on that topic.
Thank you.
Oh, are you ready?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Kyla Bennett, 2 Chickadee Lane. Thank you, Tom, for that presentation. For those of you who know me, I am the one who discovered PFAS in artificial turf and poured-in-place, which has had national implications. I find it deeply ironic that I spend probably 30% of my job doing virtual hearings and town meetings around the country, trying to get towns to not put this dangerous crap in their schools. And I'm successful about half the time. And yet in my own town, we have an artificial turf field, we have highly contaminated wells, and now you're proposing to put down more. For those of you who are unaware of what PFAS can do, as Tom said, there are thousands of them. It's a class of chemicals, not just one. There are 12,000. They're called forever chemicals because they do not break down. They can stay in the soil, in your blood, in the water for decades, for generations. They cause cancer, they cause diabetes. In pregnant women, pregnant people, they cause preeclampsia, developmental issues in children. They make children obese. They make vaccines not work well. They make you have more severe cases of COVID. I heard the principal say he wanted a safe playground. He cared about the physical health of our children. It makes no sense to care about your children, their health, their physical and mental well-being, and put down a known carcinogen. The landscape architects will tell you it's capped, but it isn't. As you know, this stuff breaks. If you go to that playground now, which has poured in place, you'll see it falling apart. It falls apart. Not only that, you're capping it from the surface, but that doesn't stop it from getting into the soil. In March of 2023, March 29th, 2023, just recently, EPA said there is no safe level, zero safe level of several of these chemicals. One of them is the one we've been finding in artificial turf and poured in place. It's going to get into our soil. Massachusetts regulates it. Massachusetts regulates it in groundwater, in drinking water, and in soil. And everywhere we have one of these artificial surfaces with this stuff leaching off, and it is leaching off, we proved that in Martha's Vineyard. You say it's only 9% of the whole area. But because there is no safe level of this, EPA says in the parts per quadrillion, 9% is still going to give you an awful lot of PFAS. I could go on, but I know it's late and everyone wants to go to bed, so I would like to propose an amendment. And yes, I have it in writing, and I'll bring it up to you. So, after the thereto, in Article 19, I would like to put a semicolon and say, provided that all plastic or rubber materials used for the playground surface are demonstrated by an independent lab to be PFAS-free, where PFAS is defined as any substance with at least one fully fluorinated carbon, in a synthetic precipitation leaching procedure, test, and a total organic fluorine test. Moreover, no crumb rubber or rubber mulch or artificial turf shall be used. I can bring this up. The bottom line, there are alternatives. So what if it costs a little more? So what if it takes a little maintenance? We're talking about our children's health, and we're talking about the town's health. Do you know why we had to pay $9 million for filtration plants? Because we're contaminated. Why are we contaminated? Partially because of our two artificial turf fields, one at Stonehill, one here. Can I prove it? No. But I do know that the two wells that are closest to the artificial turf fields.
Can't prove it, you just said it.
I can't prove it because.
Can't prove it. You want to go to bed? Come on.
This is despicable.
You have it all in writing, Ms. Beth?
I would like to thank, yes.
Second the motion.
Okay, so just to be clear, we have to deal with the amendment first before we can deal with anything else. So just to be clear for Ms. Bennett's amendment to the motion, if everybody has the motion printed in front of you, what she is suggesting is at the very end of the motion, with the last phrase being, and to authorize the select board to do or take all actions necessary to carry out this project on behalf of or in the name of the town. She's suggesting, provided that all plastic or rubber materials used for the playground surface are demonstrated by an independent lab to be PFAS-free, where PFAS is defined as any substance with at least one fully fluorinated carbon in a synthetic precipitation leaching procedure, SPLP, test, and a total organic fluorine, TOF, test. Moreover, no crumb rubber, rubber mulch, or artificial turf shall be used. Am I right? So that is the amendment to the main motion. In order for it to go forward from here, we need a second. Second. Okay, so now based on the amendment, we can take questions. Right? Any questions or comments or concerns on the amendment only at this point? On what was just read, the motion with the amendment that I just added or read to the members of the town.
I just have a question. So it feels to me, I was on the school, Dottie Fulgenetti, 78 Elm Street. I was on the school planning committee when we looked at surfaces for the play structures there. And I feel like, while I agree 100% with what you're saying, Kyla, in terms of concerns about materials, what happens if no materials are available to meet this? Because I had a comment about ADA accessibility, and when we looked at some of those other alternates, they were not ADA accessible. And I feel like if with the language that you have, it's hard to quantify, and I think it will mean that we won't be able to build the playground because there won't be any materials that can be used.
Both the pork and the wood chips are ADA accessible.
The Commission on Disability looked at that, and we felt that without the maintenance daily that's required, it wouldn't be ADA accessible to people, according to the committee.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns relative to the motion as amended? Someone's coming down the stairs. The motion as amended.
This is Lisa Hurley, 8 Carriage House Lane. I just wanted to take a second. I appreciate Dottie's comment, but I very much appreciate this lady bringing this issue to a forefront. In your explanations when you were looking at different alternatives, it seemed like it was, there are some impediments, but it seemed to me like it was impossible. It might be more expensive, which I know that no one loves, but with 2 young kids in the town, I just want to say that this is a huge issue. It is supported by science, and I think this amendment is really great, and it has my full support. That's it.
Carrie Lawson, 6 Judith Road.
Sorry. Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Sure. Carrie Lawson, 6 Judith Road. I'm here not only as a voting member of Easton, but I'm also the physical therapist for Easton Public Schools. And I certainly appreciate the health of our children, absolutely, of course. And it's not just about expense for another alternative. It is definitely about ADA compliance. I'm not sure, I'm not an expert on surfaces at all. I do know wood chips are not allowed for ADA compliance. And if you've ever been in a wheelchair, had a child in a wheelchair, pushed your grandmother or grandfather in a wheelchair, you're not getting over wood chips and accessing that playground. So that's just something to consider. Thank you.
Meredith Keach, 11 Old Foundry Street. About 6 years ago, I was looking at the school complex from an aerial, and the Clifford Grant area where you can see to the left of the schematic here is a beautiful protected forest that I walk through, my friends walk through, our residents walk through, and if that could be our playground, I would have it in a heartbeat. That's the solution, is to be able to play in the woods again. But it's not the world that we live in today, and we have to make choices. And my children, it will be safe enough for my children to play there. I have 3 who are of school age who will play on this playground. They play on the turf. They're not there 12 hours a day. They play for an hour, 5 days a week, if they're lucky, and it's not too cold or it's not raining. And I respect this, and my children drink the water too. We drink tap water. I get Simpson Spring. I do what I can. But what is really, really important here is the mental health of our population. And it has suffered severely. And what is an instant cure for your mental health, for my mental health, for my children's mental health, is to get outside and move your body. And the children cannot just sit inside and hope that they can go outside and have a good playground. The playground at RO was referred to as a prison yard. Remove that image from your mind. Every time you go by now, you're going to think of RO as having a prison yard. And I can tell you for 6 years, I've tried to work on this playground. It is so needed, and we know it's needed. And I know that the applicants would do everything they can to make it safe for the entire population as best they can, and they did. And we can't prevent it all. We just can't. We have to make choices. And I really hope that you would consider moving forward with this project. Thank you.
Jacob Napoli, 17 Turnpike Street. Just a question of clarification. If this amendment goes through and the subsequent testing or materials require more money than is currently allocated, does the project go forward with more funding needed, or what's the process if this amendment goes through and requires more funding than currently allocated?
I think that's a fair question. I appreciate the ask and all the comments from everybody. It's honestly not straightforward. It would depend upon the degree of going over the cost. So there are in every application contingency funds. So if this goes and exceeds contingency funds, there are mechanisms where applicants can cost engineer aspects out, so you lose some of the benefit. And if it becomes too great, then the project may not go forward. It may be more appropriate for it to not go forward and to come back for an additional ask of the funds necessary, given the criteria that were placed on it going forward.
Thank you.
Sure.
Matt Riley, 21 Columbus. I am a career special educator and just wanted to speak to the importance of an actual playground like this in terms of the occupational therapy goals, physical therapy goals, social skills goals, and opportunities that this will offer all of our children. I think it's critical. I can't speak to the materials or construction or things like that, but obviously having a playground and a playground that is able to support every individual regardless of their ability and is able to be inclusive for everyone gives everyone an opportunity to benefit from each other, to learn, to work on goals that they are really critically in need of working on. And of course, certainly the mental health benefits of physical exercise and things like that, and creating an accessible, inclusive environment is going to be a great benefit to our community. Thanks.
Thank you.
Don Bennett, 2 Chickadee Lane. This is not a debate about whether or not we're going to have the playing field. We're going to get the playing field. The debate is, are we going to have a playing field with poison in it? Last time I got to talk to the town, I started to spout some statistics because I'm a statistician and the moderator shut me down. So this time I'll make it really simple. If your child plays on the surfaces that have PFAS in them, they are absorbed in their lungs, they're absorbed through their skin, and they will have a higher risk of cancer than kids who do not play on those surfaces, period.
Dottie Fulgenetti. This time I'm not speaking on behalf of myself. I do go to the meetings with the Commission on Disabilities, even though I'm not a member, because I care a lot about the projects that we do in this town and ensuring that we look at them through a disability lens. So one of our members is a college student. She's in a wheelchair. She couldn't be here tonight because she's at school, but she asked me to read this on her behalf. So this letter is from Maya Ivor. It says, "My name is Maya Ivor, and I've served as an appointed member of the Easton's Commission on Disability for the last 3 years. I attended Easton Public Schools for my entire education. Growing up, I was lucky enough to be able to play on every Easton playground with my friends and never encountered a play structure I couldn't access. I've been a wheelchair user for over 5 years now, and if I went back to play on any of those playgrounds now, I would not be able to access the majority of the playground equipment in Easton. I recently had the opportunity to go to an accessible playground in Ohio, and I had an incredible time playing with my friend's 5-year-old sister. Even though I'm definitely older than the target audience of the playground, it was incredible to be included and to be able to access all of the playground equipment. Can you imagine spending recess sitting on the hot pavement, watching all of your friends have fun on the playground, knowing you can't join them? This is the case for kids who use mobility aids such as wheelchairs, walkers, and crutches, as well as children who have any other number of conditions that prevent them from climbing stairs. It's also the case for children with a temporary broken bone or other injury. Disabled children deserve to be able to play and enjoy playgrounds with their non-disabled friends. An accessible playground at Olmsted Richardson would give all kids equal access to play, which is a crucial part of childhood. It would also allow disabled teachers, parents, and siblings to access the playground with their young students or family members. Easton can be a model of inclusion for all children and make a huge difference in the lives of young disabled students. I'm asking you to support Article 19 tonight, not only for Easton's sake overall, but also to make a positive difference for every current and future disabled child in this town. Thank you, Maya Ivor.
Okay, so we have been, or you all have been debating Article 19, but more particularly the amendment to Article 19. And that's what we need to discuss first. So I have one more. Go ahead.
My name is Priscilla Almquist Olson, Seaver Street, Northeastern. This is a point of order, too. With all due respect, Dottie, we're talking... and to the moderator, I'd like to point out that aren't we discussing the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, because the last few speakers have not been talking about the amendment.
Understood.
Okay. This is not a choice about a playground that's being offered here or no playground. This amendment is about making it a safe playground for our children. Is that so hard to understand? PFAS is a terrible, terrible, destructive, cancerous potential for our kids. And when Dawn was talking about the children rolling in materials which have PFAS in them, it goes into their skin and so forth. Do you know that the greatest number of goalies, those are the goalies in hockey, are the ones that have the highest degree of cancer. Why? Because they are rolling in this when they're the goalies in hockey. I'm talking about field hockey, of course. And I'm talking about all our children. These are cancerous producing chemicals, and there are thousands and thousands of them, even though I believe the EPA currently talks about 6 or 7. I'm a grandmother. I want my grandkids to be safe, and I'm sure everybody here does too. So what's the problem? Let's vote for this amendment, and I am sure that this playground will be built. They're wonderful designs. It's a great idea. and it's going to improve the outdoor enjoyment of our children. And that's what they need. They don't need to be in front of screens and on their phones and so forth. But we want them to be safe, don't we? So I think let's vote for this amendment, and then let's all get behind and vote for the playgrounds. Remember your children, remember your grandkids. This is a very dangerous thing. And by the way, Dr. Bennett, Dr. Kyla Bennett, she is so respected on this issue. Excuse me, she's so respected on this issue. I haven't finished.
We're not going to move the question.
You cannot call for the question until I finish. She is respected so much that she is often on CNN, MSNBC, and other television shows for her expert opinion. We are blessed to have somebody like Dr. Kyla Bennett in our midst to keep us aware of the science. So please, I'm begging you, vote for this amendment, and then go ahead and vote, as Meredith said, for this wonderful playground. But as to mental health, if your body is dying of cancer, what kind of mental health do you have? Thank you.
Matt Gardner, 14 Sunset. Just a clarifying question. The materials that are proposed for this playground, how is it different than the Blanche Ames playground that just went in?
I believe they're actually the same materials in that and this.
Okay, so I don't see anybody else at the microphone. We need to vote on the amendment as it was recited up here. It was recited by Ms. Bennett. So in order to vote on the amendment, it's a simple majority vote. So first we vote on the motion as amended, right? The motion as amended. So it's a simple majority vote. All of those in favor for the motion as amended, just the motion as amended, not to pass Article 19, but just the motion as amended, please raise your orange card. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange card. We're just going to do it one more time. All of those in favor of the motion as amended, raise your orange card. Okay. All of those opposed as the motion as amended. And the motion as amended passes with a simple majority. Okay, now we need to vote on Article 19 as amended, okay? Article 19 as amended requires a 2/3 majority vote, okay? Everybody with me? So, all of those in favor... Oh, if you want any questions, comments, or concerns on that is fine. On Article 19 with the motion as amended now, yes.
Sarah Morrison, 31 Beaver Dam. Seems like there's going to be significant changes to cost of the playground with the new amendment. Is that correct?
I don't think we know that.
So we're still going to vote on this with amendment proposed with these figures.
Yes, we're going to vote on this amendment with these figures. In fact, depending upon the alternatives that are identified, the manufactured engineered wood chips, for example, are more affordable than poured in place.
Okay. When will this work happen?
It would be completed first phase by September of 2023, October. Second phase, which is the south playground, would be December of 2023 target.
So the work would be completed beginning ASAP and happen through the summer, into the fall, and into the winter of this coming school year.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand. During that time, how will adequate recess be provided to students?
I believe this is going to start after the school year ends, so therefore it wouldn't impact the current students, and then I'm sure, given the planning that's taken place with the transfer of 3 schools to Blanche Ames, that the school is well capable of planning to ensure that the impact to resident children are handled appropriately. I won't speak for them, and the applicant can get up if I didn't handle that question on their behalf well, but I think they've demonstrated the aptitude to handle on behalf of our kids complex engineering and building projects.
I'm here to speak to that point.
Sure.
So my child is a second grader, rising third grader next year, and has lived through the construction that has happened at Blanche Ames, which is an absolutely gorgeous school campus, school itself. No questions there except maybe about the PFAS in the playground. But the playground space and recess time to my child has been incredibly significantly negatively impacted. During kindergarten, we were obviously in the midst of COVID, so there was no opportunity for recess or recreation. And then upon return to Parkview School, when school went back to full-time, the administration of the school did absolutely the best they could given the circumstances. And there's no issue with that, except that there has not been adequate recess for these children during that time, playing on blacktops. And so you're talking about kindergarten, first and second grade having no physical play structures to play on whatsoever. He had 1 day during kindergarten of access to a playground. And now we're talking about these students whose mental health has been severely negatively impacted by COVID, entering into another construction project. And so I just wanted to represent my child tonight and make sure that for children that have already lived through a construction project, that their needs to adequately have access to recess and to the mental health, the positive mental health aspects of that are taken into great consideration when planning for this project.
Thank you for raising that.
Okay, any other questions?
I have one more question, and obviously the annual maintenance cost of this is going to fall into the school budget, is that correct?
Yes, I would expect that the annual maintenance cost, depending upon the products that are chosen, would fall under the school budget.
Okay, and then last question would be, could somebody please speak to the interest costs of the $3.5 million loan?
Yep, it's actually not a $3.5 million loan, so funding and borrowing for this project is $1.5 million. Over the lifetime at a 5% rate, the cost would be approximately $683,000 of a 20-year note. And if you're asking perhaps why we didn't use all of the reserved funds that we do, I think in case folks don't know, the CPC maintains a balance reserved. It's very important. It's currently $6.3 million. Has grown recently, much like the town has been diligent in preserving a cash balance. It's appropriate that the CPC does. And for this particular project, we tried to meet it halfway, candidly. Rather than depleting entirely to fund all out of our reserved cash balance, we are funding $1.5 million from borrowing and $2 million out of our, roughly rounding, out of our unreserved cash balance. And that would still preserve $4.2 million in our cash balance, which is meaningful because it enables us to continue to engage in future borrowings if there are major parcels of land that come available. So the CPC can still be a very effective player in other acquisitions in the future.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
That's a lot of numbers. So again, the cost of the 1.5 borrowed is going to be an additional $600-ish thousand?
$683,000 at a 5% interest rate. We haven't bonded it yet, so I can't give you the exact number.
Okay, thank
but
you.
we use 5% as a thoughtful proxy given where interest rates are today.
That seems reasonable. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 19 as amended? Okay, seeing none, again, now this, in order to pass, requires a 2/3 majority vote. All of those in favor, please raise those orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise those orange cards. And Article 19 passes as amended. That goes to 2/3 vote. Okay, Article 20.
I move that the town vote pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, to amend sections of the zoning bylaw of the town of Easton, adopted at town meeting March 27, 1973, and amended through May 17, 2021, as printed in the supplement titled Zoning Amendments, subsection 235. By way of explanation, this is a housekeeping item that corrects 2 sections of the table of use regulations where words or a letter were inadvertently omitted. Requires a 2/3 majority vote. Select Board recommends.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends.
The Planning and Zoning Board met on April 3rd, 2023, and voted 5-0 to recommend Article 20. Any questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 20? Okay, seeing none, Article 20 requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor, please raise those orange cards. And all those opposed, please raise those orange cards. Thank you, and Article 20 passes by 2/3. Article 21.
I move that the town vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, to amend the section of the zoning bylaw of the town of Easton, adopted at town meeting March 27, 1973, and amended through November 14, 2022, as printed in the supplement titled Zoning Amendments, subsection 235. By way of explanation, this amendment removes the ability of the planning board to grant a special permit that would allow more individual units in a multifamily development that is greater than the maximum number allowed in the Furnace Village Depot and Furnace Village Eastman districts, and adds specific criteria for allowing more individual units in a multifamily development that is greater than the maximum number allowed in the Furnace Village Business District. It requires a 2/3 vote. Tonight, the Select Board talked about this in our previous meeting, and we voted unanimously not to recommend.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends.
The Planning and Zoning Board met on April 3rd, 2023, and voted 5-0 to recommend Article 21. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Yes, Dale Carrister, 21 South Street. This zoning, for those who are not aware, it impacts the area over by Five Corners and then in the Eastman District, which is over by where Avalon is and so forth. And in a prior town meeting, folks had approved increased density for the area, especially for part of multi-use, and it set certain limits for the number of additional units that would be allocated for, based on a square footage basis. But I think unbeknownst to a lot of people at that time, one of the notes on the zoning thing also permitted the Planning and Zoning Board to grant a special permit for additional units without identifying what those criteria would be. I'm very much in favor of these changes to remove that unfettered discretion. I'm in favor, just so you know, of the increased density. I voted in favor of it back at that time, but I'm very, very concerned about providing the board with unfettered discretion to grant as many additional units as it sees fit without any criteria. And I would note that the Planning and Zoning Board, as is reflected here, also voted 5-0 in favor of this article. So the board that has that current unfettered discretion now deemed it worthy to vote 5-0 in favor of this amendment. I ask folks to consider supporting this zoning change. Thank you.
So the reason that the Select Board voted not to recommend is because the Planning Board itself brought this forward 2 years ago, asking for this discretion. And then when we asked why they wanted to rescind that, we couldn't get an answer that we understood. So if the Planning Board has the discretion to say they don't want any additional units, they don't have to have any additional units. So we felt that it was redundant because they already have this that they brought forward, that they recommended 2 years ago, and there was really no reason to remove that.
Oh, we have somebody else at the microphone.
Before you do.
Yes, and it's only one
Aaron
time.
Luca, 31 Rear, Quanticut Ave. I'd just like to point out, just like you just said, that it's at the Planning Board's discretion. Now, I know the Planning Board has used that discretion to increase number of affordable units in town since that bylaw was passed. Is there another mechanism proposed for them to be able to provide affordable housing within town if they're getting rid of that?
It really doesn't have anything to do with affordable housing specifically. This says that they have the power to increase or to allow an increase that's requested. They can say yes or they can say no. They have the power to determine.
They've recently used it that way, though.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked the question.
I'm going to ask the expert to speak.
So there still is within the bylaw an affordability bonus that exists. The change just doesn't give the planning board the ability to issue a special permit for a project that they might deem would be more beneficial to the town.
And only one time at the podium. Sorry, sir. Any other questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 21?
Could I ask for clarification on that? I'm sorry, I didn't follow it, Stephanie.
So I don't have the zoning right in front of me, but there is an allowance for affordable units.
10% increase, I think
Yes.
it reads, yep. Now, what?
That was not eliminated in
that still
removing
stays.
this language.
Doesn't the town benefit from getting credit for more affordable units by increasing that from 10% to more? For instance, if 25% of the units are affordable, doesn't the town get credit for the whole project towards affordable?
If a developer were proposing that 25% of the units would be affordable, would the town benefit in that those units would then count towards the SHI?
Yes.
And could potentially, for the whole project, all of the units could count towards the SHI, which is the subsidized housing inventory. That is the 40B requirement that a town have 10% of their housing in the town be affordable. So yes, the town benefits if a developer is offering to provide more, the 25% as you indicated.
Okay, so if this goes through, then that 25% would be of the allowed number of units that the developer can do by the bylaw. The planning board can't grant any additional units to help offset that.
Right.
Okay, just want a clarification on that. Thank you.
Hi, Anthony Morse, 32 Kristen's Way. I think there's just a little confusion here. So, for clarification, the amendment would allow the planning board to restrict the number of units going forward, despite the fact that they asked to not have that previously. Is that correct?
So right now, the way the code is written, there is a maximum number of units. So the density in the Eastman district is 1 unit per 2,500 square feet, which would allow more units, but there's a cap of 20 units. And in the Depot Street, it is 1 per 5,000 square feet with a cap of 10 units, regardless of the size of the lot. So this clause, or this allowance, currently gives the planning board the ability to consider a project with more units than the maximum allowed, if they determine that the project warrants it. And I think the example that Mr. Beluga was trying to give is that if a developer said, well, I'd like to do more units, but I would like to have 25% of those units be affordable in a manner that would count towards the subsidized housing inventory, then the planning board might determine that that is a reason to allow the additional units.
But what this article is saying is that the planning board, it wants to take away that power. They want to follow, they want to regress back to what the original is without giving them the flexibility to increase the housing should there be an opportunity like that. And you're right in how that was working.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns relative to Article 21? Okay, seeing none. Article 21 requires a 2/3 majority vote. All those in favor of Article 21, please raise your orange cards. And all of those opposed, please raise your orange cards. Yeah. I'm going to ask one more time. All those in favor, please raise your orange cards. And all those opposed, please raise your orange cards. Okay, we're going to have to do a count. Put your hands down. All those in favor. You get peeps. Get peeps. Yeah. Okay, all those in favor, you stand up with your orange card, so you're not like holding them in the air. Just stand up and hang on for us for a little while. You can keep your hands down, just stand up. Okay, everybody who's standing can sit down, and then everybody who's opposed needs to stand up. Thank you. Try to make this painless. Quick, you can get up and stretch. Last article. Okay, you all can sit down. Okay. Okay, so Article 21 did not pass. There were 92 yeses and 70 noes, correct? So it did not pass. Okay, there's no other business at this time. Does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn? And second? Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Good night.